How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the James Loud Podcast. And today our special guest is John from Green Bodhi. How are you doing today, John?
I'm doing really good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for driving down. You missed Terpene, but you still made it for the podcast this week.
After leaving Vegas, I had to get up and, check in with the fam up there and, get the kids set up and then come back down. So
it's wild. I went back to back from Vegas to Terpene to a podcast yesterday and now a podcast today. We sometimes don't film one a week like it looks, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that's sick. Looks like you've been active. I was out in Michigan, then drove all the way back to Oregon, drove down to Vegas, did the whole MJ, and then drove back up home and then come back.
Serious driving.
Serious. Living. Luckily, with the vans these days, you can, have your little studio apartment in there too.
Oh yeah, it's like a house on wheels. It's pretty amazing.
It works good.
Yeah. So what have you been up to lately?
Really just doing some work with Reverse the Sour OG, threw that by a bunch of chems. Just trying to find some good, OG chem line varieties, just because that's my favorite. And that's kind of what I'm liking. So.
I feel like it's making a huge comeback. I got some real sour diesel flower in my bag right now. Sick. And I've got some good OG as well. But like OG and sours and those chems I feel like are making a comeback. Maybe not in the Bay or in LA as much as in the hills, right? So the guys I know from Humboldt, the guys I know from Oregon, we're all talking about sours and OG and where can we get the gas?
Well, that's kind of what we've been talking about for like a couple decades now. We're
for sure.
The late 90s, early 2000s, at least in Eugene, it was, we had, that's what was rolling through and everyone was doing the sour diesel. It's different than AJ's, the East Coast Sour D and AJ Sour D, but like the East Coast Sour D that everyone was rocking and, doing their thing with. But that was, a lot of us were smoking when the OGs came up and everything. Obviously, they're just super desired, at least from the old heads that like that kind of. Yeah, because we had Trinity up there too.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I'm very familiar with the Trinity, the four-way, the snow, the corn.
The snow, dude, the corn.
The corn, yeah.
Oh, I got this chauffeur. It reminds me of the old corn.
No way. That's so amazing. And then and then we had the snow bud. So there's a couple different snow buds, but there was one we got from Eugene that was amazing. So
the super cracked out one that smelled like burnt rubber and was just purple. Yeah,
it was a little podully.
Oh my god, it was so
really
good.
Amazing.
That one was so good.
Yeah, I mean. So a lot of our genetics, not a lot of them, but a lot of the good ones through our group of friends came from Eugene. We got the dog bud from Eugene, which was a chem dog bag seed, I think West Coast dog.
The dog was my first introduction to the chem family.
Us too.
And I got it, and I was like, smelled like chlorine and gas, and it was like crazy.
Chemicals, it smelled like chemicals.
Crazy, it was so good. I wish I had that pheno still because that was.
I think. It's still around.
Okay, sick.
It's still around. Yeah, and that's like it's wild because it grows very much like the sour, and then it finishes different, different structure at the end.
Without a doubt, it was so cool, and yeah,
good times. Yeah, so you've been around a while.
Yeah, a little bit,
Yeah. Especially from the areas that I know. I mean, let me know what you think of that.
Nice.
And we had Dave from Budgellero with the old school sour. So I was kind of thinking my mind was playing tricks on me. Because so many people have shown me sour over the last 2 years, especially, and I've been looking for the sour cut. And then this guy, Dave, comes up to me at Reagan in the River with buds in his hand. He goes, "Tell me what you think of this," and you can be honest. And so I'm like,
Dave from Eugene, Dave?
No, Dave from Budgellero, different Dave.
Okay.
But yeah, Dave he's from Ukiah and from Budgellero, Dave Perkins. He's also he works for Amsterdam. He's He's one of those witnesses. He's really great. So, but he had the real deal, and it reminded me of the original sour that we had when there was only one sour.
Totally, yeah. No, the one that was going. I mean, at least from what I knew, the sour around Eugene, it wasn't even really called East Coast Sour Diesel. Then it was called sour.
Exactly.
And it was an amazing cut. Really, I mean, what's sad is I let it go just because I was over it. I mean, I didn't because we had other things going and. I just didn't, I was like, whatever, I wish I wouldn't have, but.
I was smart and gave it to a family member and had gotten it back 6 times before they ended up getting rid of it, So I had really had to go back up into Washington to get it a bunch of times.
I wish I would have did that with the original, that Big Sir Holy cut that was going around Eugene, the purple stem, it was one of my favorites. And, some of those ones you just don't do that with,
right.
Over the time,
I've lost so many good things over the years. I mean, we had a shaman that was like a Romulan shaman backcross that was, it should have been called the Shamulan, but it was called the shaman. And that was some amazing stuff. And I could smell it to this day, like in the back of my nose, the perfumey incensiness of it. And there's so many like things like that we had that, got lost along the wayside. We didn't have the preservation techniques that we have today.
No. And we didn't, we weren't thinking like that then. I mean, I was saving a lot of things because if I liked it, I felt like I had to save it, hold it, give it to my friends, or at least the family that you want them to have that blessing, and that experience of what you're, because it's not to say it's rare. There's a lot of amazing keeper phenos that are going around of all types of cultivars, but the ones that are drawing you from growth stage all the way to the right when you're lighting the bong or whatever, and it's like right when it starts to go, like it's registering there. It's a keeper there, like those ones, those are the ones that you can have in your jar for 10, 20 plus years, like, and always have it. Those are, I really have felt, kind of a stewardship in my own mind to hold some of those of what have crossed this boundary, because we all have our own bioassay, right? So like for me, I have what works for me, but it, if it isn't strong and powerful on a terpene and a, cannabinoid level, it's probably not making it through, but when they do, and you notice all the elites that people are holding on, they are up in that upper threshold. Most of them are, in between 20 and 30%. Most of them are pretty high terp profile and unique,
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think I refocused, and I talk about it a lot on my podcast, but I really refocused since 420 of this year on effect and going back in that direction to how does it make me feel, and how does it make other people feel?
Totally.
Instagram has taken us in this direction where it's like, how does it look, guys? It looks
down
amazing.
Purple, bro. It's good.
Yeah, it's so frosty. It's so, and it's like, but that doesn't tell you how it tastes and how it makes you feel. And I mean, there's so many things out there effect-wise that I'm revisiting where I'm like, whoa, that creeper weed that kicks in after 15 minutes, it really gets you.
Right. And you're all bugged out a little bit. You're like,
Yeah, where I took a full bong rip and I was like, I'm not even high. So I took another one. And then like literally 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh yeah, this is that creeper. Dude. And it was some mother's weed from Johnny at Huckleberry Hill Farms. That stuff is pretty special. He has the white thorn rose, which is very like,
I've heard of that one.
Not indica, not sativa, where, everyone wants to classify these things as indica sativa, but it's a hybrid in the middle, and it's feel good weed. It makes you just feel good. You can smoke it in the morning, afternoon, evening. The rosin's purple. It's something special, and the effect of it is extremely special. And then he has basically from the same progeny, he has another plant, and it has a very different effect. It does different things to your mind, and it creeps up on you, and it makes you feel good, but it really kind of, it's a more intense version of that effect. And I love that,
I love strains like that. Like I have the Hazy Kush, and it was actually my attempt to recreate the Big Sur Holy, different genetics, but looking for the similar effect and similar style and morphology and things like that. But it's one of those strains that like, if you're on a good one, it'll really put you on a good one. Euphoric, super stimulating, super energizing. But if you're on a bad one and in a kind of depressed state, it'll make you like on a
rethink
bad
life.
One. Dude, you're like, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one time this artist that we worked with, Gifted Gab from Blackalicious, and he's passed now, rest his soul. But like we did a show with him, and my friend gave him a chunk of Hazy Kush right off the top of the jar, and he went out and smoked a joint, and my buddy's like, hey, bro, I busted in your jar and gave him a nug, gave Gab a nug. I was like, hopefully it wasn't that one off the top, bro. He's all like, oh, it was, dude. I was like, oh, that was the hazy, bro. He's all, no, because this dude, my friend couldn't even smoke this weed because it like, kind of put him on one,
Right.
Sure enough, 30 minutes into Gab's set, he comes off stage because he threw his back out, first thing they're coming backstage down the hall, and my buddy's like, hey man, here's my Dr. John, I'm like, hey, what's up, bro? He's all, oh dude, my back, bro, my back. He's all, how'd I sound? I was like, oh, it was like that. I was like, oh, he's sounding good, bro. Let's go. Like, so we worked it out, did a meditation, did some breathing, and then it was a New Year's Eve shows, and then they went out and crushed it at New Year's. But like, It was an hour of like, sometimes weed will put a hurt on someone that's not a, all day user kind of guy.
100%. Yeah. And it's so subjective to the individual. And, we all are so different in what we like. I mean, there's stuff that I think we can agree on across the board at times, but then we're also, as far as tolerances and other things like that, I mean, some people love the uplifting and some people love the narcotic.
Totally.
And you can go, and the beauty of the plant is you can go in any direction with it. There's so many different places. Oh yeah, salads. I love salads too, flavor wise.
Right.
And I think that's coming in as far as rosin guys blending their rosin flavors. I mean, it's a great. They've done it with wine and other things forever.
For sure. Yeah. No, that's the thing is there's so many people and so many styles of chemistry. So like to be able to offer that, and people have to understand their own chemistry and what works for them. Like for me, I consistently smoke about 3 different strains. And even though I may have 30 jars, I'm literally still picking from 3 of those jars.
Yeah.
And I put, a nug from each one of those jars in my jar for the day. And like, that's kind of like how I roll, and that'll change. But there's some that have lasted through time that are been that way for 10, 15, 20 years now, and those ones, like I was, was telling you at the show, it's like, I'm definitely not, I don't consider myself a breeder in any way, but I can select decently, and what I'm selecting and how I'm selecting, I'm really selecting for myself, but because I know I'm a pretty big critic and what I can offer others through my own selection, because I am an extreme critic, I think they'll appreciate it at least, and
totally.
Like,
well, I honestly feel like that's more important than being able to make seeds, because as a breeder, the breeding part is doing the selection, right? So at the end of the day, everybody's like, oh, I'm a breeder. Well, what kind of selections are you making? It's like, yeah, you made some seeds. That's cool. But show me some years of progress and where you went with it and what you're doing. And, have you improved the gene pool, or are you just, trying to make some money? And I think,
totally.
and there's nothing wrong with either one, but let's just be real about it. Like breeding, in my book, I kind of go into it as well, but the breeding is really through the selection process. And that's what makes a good breeder is like, okay, well, you can take 50 seeds and you can pick the best one or maybe the best 3 or whatever it is, and be able to have that translate into something that's long lasting.
For sure. And that's why I've done doing a lot of work with the 89 NL5, Sinbud gave me these seeds. They come from Melvinetics work that, they did with the 89 NL5 from Neville, and
right.
Well, I was kind of skeptical about it because I had some stuff from Jim from Jaime Chiba and, before he passed, and amazing NL5, but it was what I was expecting.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was what I was expecting. It wasn't as strong. It wasn't current day cannabis what I was expecting, but it was what I was expecting on on that kind of set. But then I had this 89 NL right by it. And at first I was like, oh, they weren't growing as fast. So I was kind of, but then I noticed some really interesting traits. And I'm not kidding, over the next 3 weeks, the way they formed. And one of them was straight Afghani, like chocolate, acrid, reminded me of purple Bubba kind of, and,
right.
And then the other one reminded me of a Chem Sour, So I was like, oh, and what was crazy is I'm like, oh, something must be not right. Do you know what I mean? And then, but I was really impressed, but I'm like, between these 2 plants, I'm looking at 80% of cannabis right now between these 2, you know what I mean? And what that can create there. And luckily, like Jorge Cervantes came into town and came over and he stayed with me for like a week, and at that time when I had those pollinated on the deck, just 2 plants on my deck, actually just because I was just letting them go longer and I had to do stuff with that room, you get it.
Totally.
And I was like, hey man, can you verify these? Because you were around, you were sure. Like, and he's like, dude, what? He was so shocked. He got Ron Krieft on the phone, which is one of Neville's main apprentices,
Wow.
We are on like FaceTiming and they were just like, I was just tripping,
I bet.
Because the level of quality, then that made sense how the lore made it that long. So,
right.
Putting that into you'll see some stuff from over here, and I've put that by a lot of things, and things like the sour best shit ever, which is, there's a lot of misinformation about that strain. In my opinion, it's one of the best OG cuts, and
right.
So like putting the 89 NL to that, making these super stinky chem, very interesting, it's kind of to see and Jimmy from Original Breeders League, he did a huge, he did his huge thing, a very beautiful, impressive thing, but did some testing on the 89 NL, and that was extremely stable, and I see the breeding trueness through all the breeding. it creates such beautiful potential, but still holds true a lot of its morphology, a lot of its tendencies, which in that case is good,
Right.
And so I'm trying to basically bring that into all the current day elites and kind of revigorate the, not say I'm like, oh, I'm going to make the gene pool better or nothing like that. But
no. Well, you're not taking away from it. That's for sure. But I feel like, I'm doing something similar. I'm taking old school cuts and marrying it to new school cuts. Fort Collins cough, some of the old chems.
Sick.
And I really like that approach because I feel like we're bottlenecking ourselves into these gelatos and runts and Skittles and these things. We tend to do that just as it's human nature, right?
Totally.
So we like something, we want to double down on it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, with medicine, it's like, oh, it works good, so let's take twice as much, right? I mean, that's just human nature.
It's
I
okay
think.
With mushrooms, but most other things.
Exactly. With your mushrooms, yeah. I mean, you learn real quick, but
medicinal mushrooms are like like lion's mane stuff.
Yep.
From when I heard Michael Symbiote talking, he's like, you should be eating so much of those that you smell like mushrooms. I was like, that sounds medicinal.
That sounds extremely medicinal.
You're sweating lion's mane smell.
I love being able to sneak old school stuff into the new market where it's like people are like, oh yeah, I love that. And it's like, I have a Blue Dream double lemon cherry, right?
Oh, wow.
That has a little bit of that blue, what's special about Blue Dream. And it has like, it's unmistakable Blue Dream with a structure of a gelato or of these lemon cherries,
wow.
And so I love being able to kind of sneak that in under the rug where people are like, whoa, that's freaking amazing. And they're haters of Blue Dream, and I love Blue Dream for its own, in its own right. Blue Dream is one of the best plants out there as far as structure. It's the apical of structure.
Man, it yields well. It's resistant.
It might not have the effect that everybody's looking for, but it sure is special in its own right.
For the soccer moms, bro, it's ideal, bro.
For sure.
And for people that aren't looking for that, like kick you in the head.
Yeah, and there's something for everybody. And it's like you want a turned up version of that. There's Strawberry Cough. It's very much like that, but it's like the turned up version of Blue Dream,
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So tell me how you got your start in the industry. How long has it been?
I guess I started growing, in the industry. I guess there wasn't really an industry then.
No, there wasn't, but there was community.
When I was a kid, like selling sacks and all that, but like when I came to Eugene in end of 96, I had really bad allergies, and I was growing all these different pepper plants, habanero, datil, like all, and just like basically just eating them raw.
Wow.
Because I was like, man, the allergies is like on another level. They call it the Valley of Sickness or something, Willamette Valley. Or something.
Right.
Anyhow, so then I popped a couple, obviously I was smoking weed, and I was working with a friend that was like connected to, I think still one of the last holders of the Trinity, because I gave it back to him.
I've been looking for it forever. Trinity Bob was supposed to give me a cut. I don't know if you know Bob from up there in Eugene. Bob
Dole.
Is it fancy cars?
Oh no, this guy's
old guy.
Super pierced up, tatted up guy. Different, but he's
different. But yeah,
he goes by Bob Dole, but he's the one that like his name's Andrew. But when I first got in contact with Trinity, it was from him in '97.
Wow. Nice.
So, but anyway, ended up giving him the cut back, and
nice.
But becoming a part of this friend group, which is in Eugene in the 90s, there's like cliques, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Snodgrass Batch from Family Clique, you got the Dog Kingdom cliques, Silver People, and these other kind of crews. And then these kind of out of towners, that were coming there to grow weed. My good buddies were from Wisco now. Goes, Devin Somerville, Krungelstein. He's pretty popular kind of, does these kind of like,
old school Atom Smasher,
chameleons, and like amazing dab rigs. But then I saw him make this little corn cob pipe, and I was like, "Ooh, make me a 3-hole one on the top so I can do full melt in there." So
yeah. We used to call those Atom Smashers. I don't know what they call them now, but that's
where they use the hot rod. You mean
use the hot rod? You smash it in there.
Well, this is what I use to smoke bong hits, flower. Like I'll just put a nug in there, torch this up red hot, and bong hit like that. And
it's a great way. I think I got 4-5 of them, and then I got the actual down stem that for the bong.
For sure, yeah, the 3-hole. Remember the Illadelph one where we put the old school hash in it, like before all this new
all these new rigs and all the technology.
Bro, you can't even barely handle some of this hash. It's like 90U, like full melt. My buddy Buck, New Rose Farms, so it's like you look at that stuff and it's like, how do you even it's hard to work with, you know what I mean?
Well, and this stuff you can't really hot knife either.
No, I mean
you can, but
that's the beauty of this thing here is like you put a ball of that in here, and then
it's amazing.
You put that hot rod to that, and that's like about as hot knife as it gets, you know.
Right.
And it's really, I like it a lot, you know, and that's kind of my favorite. But so anyway, like I just put a couple seeds in a spider plant in my bedroom, right? And they sprouted, and I was like, oh, got to build a spot for them, you know.
Yeah.
So then, you know, I had this foam and all hanging in my closet. It was like light leaks everywhere. It was junk, man. It was like about as junk as it gets. And then I was like, well, I'm not going to do it like that. I'm going to do it right actually this time. So I built a little box. You know, I had like a 250 watt, light off of someone's parking lot, you know, and then I got 150 watt HPS from like a Home Depot, you know, there's the little one. Yeah. Had that in this wood closet that, you know, box that I built. And, you know, I got Blueberry Trin, I got Trinity, Big Sur Holy, and this strain IDK, this kind of Afghani, it stood for I don't know, you know, but, and with good genetics. And I went out and dug my soil out from King Estate's apple orchard. Just dug that, took it home, mixed it with pith and perlite, some, you know, oyster shell, whatever, green sand. Didn't realize at that time green sand takes so long to break down. You don't even like, it's like, but I threw some green sand in there, some guanos, and just water, and was fucking sick, you know, like it was like so dank and so bomb. And I was like, oh, okay, genetics. The genetics, sure. You know, because really, you know, with good genetics, if you don't overwater or underwater, overfeed, or, you know, you can underfeed good genetics, it'll still be dank.
If you have good soil and good genetics, you're halfway there, you know.
Like,
and then there's the drawing, and that's a whole nother conversation. Right? But yeah, I mean, genetics, it's plays such a huge role in the end product.
Totally. I mean, it's so, you know, discovering that, and then, you know, classic style just doubled every time.
Yeah.
And you know, I was you remember Greg from American Ag up in Portland, you know, like I was the first one to get him to get a carbon filter, you know, like I went up there, and I think it was 98 or 99. I can't remember, but like my buddy that supposedly bred the Shishka berry, Adam, he owned a washing machine kind of repair thing. And we used his business to get the wholesale account, you know, so we can get lights for cheaper, and, you know, because they were building their lights there. And I went up to Greg and I was like, hey man, I saw this thing. It's a like activated carbon air filter for like exhaust. He's all, what? I was like, yeah, can you order me one, you know?
Such a game changer.
Dude, because I mean, you grow in Trinity, Big Sur, you know, like 2 bedrooms full, no filter. You're just using the box fan with the like attic fan on it, you know, making a box with the attic fan and the, you know, the ducting out of it. Like that was your setup, you know, to plug that into a carbon filter. Yeah. I mean, I remember one time I pulled up to my house, you know, getting ready to turn in. I can smell the trend, you know, just like on the road.
Oh yeah.
This happened multiple times. And right when I was about to turn in, 4 sheriffs just right in front of my house. And I'm like, oh my God. And then they went 2 houses down. They just stopped, and then they drove 2 houses down. I pulled in, and they were like getting the guy. I was just like, oh my God.
Oh man.
Bugging, bro. You know?
Yeah, they were such a game changer. Cause I mean, I remember growing some chem back in the day, and it just, the whole house smelled, but even the neighbors down the street were like, there's a skunk. Have you guys seen the skunk? And I thought they were fucking with me, but they really thought it was a skunk. Like literally thought it was a skunk because it was so strong.
For sure. Well, it smells so much like a live skunk.
Yeah. Especially a lot of stuff we had back in the day compared to now.
Especially Trinity even, you know. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I haven't smelled anything more skunky than the original Royal Trin.
Yeah.
I have a Trinity cut now. It's the future Trin. Because, you know, we had the Trinity, and then this other Trinity came like after, and we called it the future Trin. A little more dense, a little more. And that's the one going around right now. It's not the old school one.
There's a lot of things that are like that, where they're like, the Durban's another one. Like it's a different Durban than I remember. The Durban wasn't a terpenoline dominant, you know, aroma on it. It was like, it was cherries, and it was funky, and, you know, anise. So it was like licorice, cherries, and strong and pungent. And then the stuff now that I see as Durban is super hazy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very, very haze-like. And that wasn't the Durban that I remember. The Durban we had was like orange yarn hair growing over that would cover, like, it didn't look like it had trichomes on it. And then you pulled the hairs back a little.
Interesting.
But yeah, so many things were like that. But yeah, that Trinity, extremely, extremely special.
For sure.
But yeah, and it's like finding it. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Well, one person I know has it, but, you know, obviously getting old school genetics from old school types of people, it's a process in itself. You know what I mean?
For sure. Well, there's a reason they're not out there. And probably a good reason. I think a lot of stuff, you know?
You know, I have things that I won't let go, you know, like Graham, you know, he gave me the PHK, and I did some breeding with it, but I won't let that cut go.
Right.
I won't, Same with Brandon, he gave me the Afghani bull rider. Same thing.
I think we're stewards of these plants. It's our job to protect them, not just to keep them alive and share them with everybody, which a lot of people think, oh yeah, you should share them with everybody. No, I mean, as a steward, you should be responsible with them.
For sure. Just like everything, we see what's happening in the industry and the stewardship that is happening and that isn't, that could be.
Right.
There's a big thing that's happening. But there's more that could happen, especially with notoriety and publicity a lot of people are getting. If they were to utilize that and really turn it instead of for financial gain, and still keep the financial gain part, but really do it for philanthropic reasons.
For the right reasons.
Stewarding.
I agree.
Whatever their perspective of relationship is with the plant. But if they stewarded that for others, instead of it being more superficial and,
right. Well, once it's authentic, it's just, and the thing is, all these things, they come across as either authentic or not. You can see right through all the bullshit a lot of times,
Well, I think the plant helps with that too. It sure does shed the veil and cut the veil and, really in our own self and our own behavior and mental dispositions and in the outside world too.
Well, I was so excited at Terpenomi this last weekend because of the quality level of breeders that were there, all in one place. A lot of Emerald Cut people, right? But more sativa leaning hybrids or sativas than I'd ever seen in one place at one time, that outnumbered the gelatos and outnumbered the cookie crosses and the stuff that we've really seen as modern cannabis. The people, there was a lot of people from the hills coming down, which I love it. And we were seeing these long flowering varieties and in abundance from all over. Jesse from BioVortex. We had Mark from Gray Shock. We had, Jackson was there, Mean Gene and Rebel Grown and a bunch of people coming together with all these old school genetics and all old school expressions, stuff that, maybe it's a new cross, but a lot of stuff I've seen before, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that gets me excited. And it gives me hope for the future. To be honest, I feel like that kind of stuff, when there's all these great people, we got a group photo of everybody. Shord was there. And then we had Ariane from Greenhouse coming out, and he was like shaking his head, like, what are these Americans doing? I've never seen this happen before. And, so that gives me hope that we can get ourselves out of this bottleneck where it's all gelatos. And I feel like there's nothing wrong with gelatos. There's nothing wrong with these purple candy gas varieties, but there's more to cannabis than just those things. And there's more than Instagram, there's nothing wrong with Instagram, and it can be used as a positive tool. I think it has its benefits. It has benefits for both of us. I think it helps us promote our brands, but at the same time, you don't get to smell it, you don't get to taste it, and you don't get to feel the effect.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that's what's really, it's education. And I think that's what a lot of us that have been around a while should be doing, just my personal opinion, is informing everyone, because if I have, a few different cookie crosses, a few different gelato things, and then others say OGs or hazes or chems, and I'm continually going over to these hazes and chems and OGs, people should take note of that. Why? Because we have the best of both. Yeah. And when you have the best of both, you're going to choose what registers in your own chemistry well. And I think once people understand that, they should actually maybe not seek out what's hype and hyping, but seek out what's, who's growing it, how it's grown, methodology, and how old the genetic line is maybe, and try to discover something new, because you might realize that, hey, this older stuff really vibes with me more actually, because the hives may be more stimulating, more invigorating, more, like cerebral and, more rushy. And, these kind of feelings are like kind of what the old schoolers are liking and have been liking for years. Hence why, at Terpenomi, you see this, everyone's like, check it out, what we've been doing, same thing we've all been doing for a long time, but it's not hype bottlenecked. It's creativity and effect expressed,
Well, the modern world has changed things so much. It's like back in the day, you used to know where your vegetables were coming from. You used to know who was raising your cattle. And same thing with breeding your flowers or growing your cannabis. It's like there's a big disconnect. I have some of my Snoop Dogg selling some of my genetics. I just saw jars with the loud loops on there. But there's this big disconnect, and I think they're not giving necessarily the breeders credit or the cultivators credit. They're just marketing flower, and it is what it is. But I feel like there's a better story and a deeper story, and there's deeper understanding to be had about all this stuff, especially like farmers up in Humboldt, right? Like I use them as the example, but it's really farmers everywhere, being able to tell their story, farm to table, where you can go to the farm, you can see them produce it there. You can talk to the grower, you can talk to the breeder, the extract artist, whoever that is, where there's like more of a story, and then you have a deeper connection to that flower. And I mean, cannabis is about community anyway, and I feel like that's part that we've kind of gone away from that we really need to go back to.
Yeah, and I think that's what's coming back around. I think that's why obviously these podcasts are so popular for people, and because you have, a lot of really cool people and expressions of humanity on these different podcasts that are, being able to connect with a different set of, viewers and a whole different sphere, and to be able to, this gets really, enlightening for everyone and really endearing for all of us to be able to share what we've experienced, the fight, the struggles that we've, because as it's been a smaller time that it's been legal of us doing this than it's been illegal of us doing this,
right.
And a lot of us, we did a lot of work for the states and different things, I did a lot of work with Oregon and their legalization push and multiple rules advisory committees, head grower advisor, got things like unlimited plant count written into law, when it was like 100 plant, federal, right? Like 99 and under, no call to the Fed, 100 and over, they could call the Fed.
101.
You're like bumming,
Right.
So like to be able to get things like unlimited plant count written in and, like really holding that seat for the people.
Yeah.
Really as a people's voice, because even at the end, right at the very end, when that got signed into law, that got switched up a little bit. So, there's even when it's public, lobbying makes a difference.
Yeah, and we have short memories. So I feel like people have short memories. There's new people coming online all the time that they weren't there to experience it. So it's great to be able to remind people, or the younger generations that are coming online, to be able to watch this now, or watch this podcast that we're having 5 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now,
right?
And, understand what was going on in 2024.
It's going to be a different thing in 2030 even. And, this next 5 years, next 10 years is going to be crazy for cannabis. Who knows what's going to happen, but it's not going to be less.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not going to be less, and
we're going in
global.
Different directions for sure.
Everyone's already, you remember how it was when it was, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Washington. I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's like, and then Cali, then it just like, it was like, I mean, now look at it. It's
international scale. We got Germany, which is a very big country. I mean, it's a very big deal. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's just another country. No, it's a big, big, big country that's going online with recreational.
Connected to all the EU.
And they have the highest, the German EU GMP is the highest of its standards. As far as like German GMP standards are higher than anywhere else in the world.
Wow.
And so I think it's great. We had Ariane talking about it, about how, the stacks of paperwork to get the CGMP done is like, 4 feet tall.
Wow.
So, but yeah.
Real pro stuff,
Real pro stuff.
Hard to bootstrap.
Very hard to bootstrap, very hard to go from the ground up, but I mean, I think that stuff is great. I think I'm big on testing oversight. I think that we need more of that in the United States.
For sure.
I'm not super big on government oversight and more government, but I am in favor of universal testing that's puts us in line with other countries. I feel like there's so much motivation to have higher testing results for the farmer, for the breeder, for the lab, and then the person who suffers is the end user because they're not getting true results.
Well, and that's the thing is it's like, when we are getting true results, it's harder to sell, like even, like our good buddies, SC Labs, and Alec, I've been knowing him for a long time, and he's been helping me through that whole process with Oregon, and to see how, what we're getting testing wise with him consistently I
use SC as well. So I feel like they're straight shooters.
Yeah, they're real, but then when you're getting a 22 or a 19 or 23, 23 maybe is more marketable, but when you're getting the 19 to 21 range, it's so much harder to market that flower in the rec reality because people think that it's supposed to be around 30, and that's actually not true.
Right.
It's when, when I talk to them, even Addison, when I, at Steep Hill back in the day, when I first brought him the Golden, at that time, he tested it at 24.7, I think. And the highest that he had tested at that point was 19.4 or something like that. So it was a huge deal to jump that much,
Right.
But even then he was talking about it when they started doing these hash testing and different things and flower testing. You can't have it that high. It's not like actually physically possible, you know? So, you know, to have these like 40%, it's like, it's pretty sus, you know?
It is. You know, I have some testing results that are like 40% total cannabinoid, 41% total cannabinoids. And it's like, it's pretty wild if you think of that amount. If we look at a bud, like 40% of that is cannabinoids. It's wild.
Right. And you're like, I want to believe it. You know, I have a lot of really good tests and a lot of good COAs that are really, you know, you can show them off, but
I don't have anything from Steep Hill that tests in the 40s. Nothing.
You know, like in Oregon, there's some labs that get some high testing, and, you know, SC labs have always been, you know, like true.
Yeah.
And because most of the gear that I'm selecting naturally tests between 22 and 26%. Just what my kind of, you know, bioassay, what that's kind of, you know, desiring is that range, just naturally.
I think the best flavors come in that low 20s, you know, and there's some stuff there's anomalies that, you know, that I think are in the 30s that do have amazing flavor and they're high terpenes, but it's very rare because cannabinoids compete with terpenes. So typically the higher the cannabinoids, the lower the terpenes and vice versa. And then it's not all about just terpenes. Now the word flavorance has come to mind recently. Abstracts Tech they wrote some white papers on flavorance and, you know, sulfur-based compounds and thiols, basically.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we've been talking about thiols for a long time, and now they're categorizing thiols and showing how they contribute to the flavor and aroma, which I think is great.
Well, those are all kind of the more like, I mean, is it like a microthiol or a thiol? Is that it's a, you know, basically it's a style of terpenes still, right?
It's a smaller flavor molecule.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot harder to test for.
Well, and that's why I think that, like, you know, for me personally, like I like fresh herb, you know, after it's been dried for about 7 days, from that point to about a month is my favorite sweet spot personally.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's because all the, you know, terpenes and the microthiols and the thiols are all in a combination there. And, you know, the more, you know, ones that degenerate, you know, quicker, they're not going to be around in a month, you know, or, you know, people are like, oh, curing it slow and low, this, that, and the other. You know, that's great. I get it. But for me personally, I just like the range of what happens from when it's freshly dried.
I like it loud, right?
Yeah. You know, to you know, and it's like, even my buddy Steve, you know, like, from Green Life, he's like, man, like, what's the deal? You know, like, I want my jar to fucking smack, you know, I want it to, you know, and I'm like, man, he's all, when I open your jar, it just hits, you know, and I'm like, man, cause I love fresh weed.
Yeah.
You know, like,
well, and I think it's also subjective to the cultivar, and there's factors at play, but like Skittles, for example, it is the best when it's fresh, right? When it's done drying and it's like maybe cured for a couple days, you don't need to burp it anymore, whatever you do.
Right.
That's when it is the very best, and it doesn't get better on the nose. It still smokes good for a lot longer, but that first like week and a half, it's just loud. It just hits you in the face. And sour's kind of like that too. Sour will smoke good for a long time, but like the loudness of the sour when you open it, the fresher the better.
Well, it's like even with like OGs, you know, it's like after a week is when they really start to punch harder, you know? Like
exactly.
You know, you're like fresh, you want to smoke it right immediately because it has its thing.
Right.
But after a week, it's like
it
has that
smokes
the anise and the whole like thing starts to come out more. It's like
more piney and earthy and
totally.
For sure. And then there's like Jacks have their own thing, right? Jacks, I feel like the limonene stuff that's really high in limonene actually deteriorates pretty fast. So they don't last even in like the terp blocks. We do a bunch of trials with stuff, and some of that limonene, the limonene varieties seem to age faster. And I'm not sure exactly why, but it's definitely one of those things. Like 6 months later, they're never as good.
Well, maybe because that terpene, you know what I mean? It's like, I mean, it's a solvent in a lot of, you know, industries. So maybe that's kind of degrading the other terpenes.
It's the use of that solvent. And it works really good on those varieties.
You know, for sure.
So so what's your favorite thing to smoke?
I've been liking this SPSE by 89NL. And there's some things in that jar pack that I really like a lot. And that one's
it's nice.
Just the 89NL, I really like the high, what it's doing, and you know,
this earthy thing going on. That's really good.
For sure. You know, it kind of reminds me of like of a dog walker smell almost a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
So and those are, you know, I like that one a lot. The Lemon Punch by 89, I've been liking a lot. PHK Afghani.
Yeah.
You know, kind of just you know, like I said, I have a, pretty good selection of things to choose from, but I keep going to these specific ones. And, some of them are new, but like the Hazy Kush, it's a terpenoline, osmine, humulene kind of strain.
Right.
But it'll always have a place for me. People are like, oh, I'm not really into the terpenoline at all. I was like, well, the right combination. Shit smells like candy and it's like really good, and if it's done right, it's epic. And the high that's, when those terpenes are combined with high THC, it's something special happens, and the same with all of it. The reason people understand, the reason a lot of they like something, it's not the cannabinoids, it's the fucking terpenes, and that combination, when you have all these cannabinoids that we do understand and ones we don't, you combine that with terpenes we do understand and ones we don't, there's just a range. And then when you start talking of like organics versus conventionals and all the, enzymatic stuff, and, when you really, there's a micro nuances that we just don't understand yet, that, that for some reason it's calling us, but we just don't know why scientifically yet.
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface of it.
For sure.
So yeah, I would 100% agree. And I love soil, and I use cocoa, but I also love smoking soil. We have a closed loop facility, so I'm not trying to bring bugs in.
Right.
That's the disadvantage.
A whole giant biome.
Right. Exactly. Like, I mean, in a perfect world, yeah, we could do that, but here we're confined to the constraints
totally
of cleanliness, especially, and trying to be, as sterile as possible.
One of the cleaner spots I've been to, period.
Thank you.
Like really, and the protocol's perfect.
Yeah, our SOPs are pretty dialed, and we're just constantly trying to prevent pests. Because pests can come in from the outside. They can come in on someone's shirt. We don't allow people typically in our nursery ever. We have a pretty dense plant count in there. Oh, this stuff got me. It smells amazing though.
Right. From the non-smoke terp. You're like, because remember you were saying the chems like get you.
Yeah.
You're like, what? I'm allergic to this one.
For sure. So I got a question for you. Oregon, let's talk about a genetic that everyone hates talking about in Oregon is Jager. What's your opinion on Jager?
I mean, it's a pheno of like the Hindus from what I've understood. Even like, you look at Graham's purple Hindu Kush, it's like, smells like tangerine and citrus.
Yeah.
Purple, cracked out, looks like cookies kind of like, and he told me, he's like, dude, I sourced this out of Hindu Kush seeds, and just so I'm assuming the Jager's same deal. It's a purple Hindu Kush, meaning a Hindu Kush that was purple.
Yeah.
And it made it through, people love it and it's, resistant. And I think it's like run its course through the outdoor community. Yeah,
it was like Blue Dream. In the beginning, everyone loved it. Like literally it's another Blue Dream where it was like in the beginning, it was like, whoa, what is this? Everybody had to have it. The cuts got out everywhere. And that's part of like the stewardship of stuff, But, we keep going back to the stewardship, but that's another one. It's like, it became popular and then people started hating on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a unique smelling plant and the highest, is what it is, but I think there's just a lot better. And, anything that people blast out that hard is going to have some kickback. Just
for sure.
Normally.
Eventually. I mean, people hate on cookies now too. And cookies back in the day, real original cookies was special.
I still have that cut. I got it from Alec actually from SD Labs in 2000, I think 11 or something. 2012.
Did you have it when it was just cookies? Right?
Yeah, it was
there
cookies.
Was only cookies.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
Small producer. Like the original.
But it was more like burnt rubber funk, like
extremely strong licorice.
Yeah, exactly. It was that cut. That's the one I'm still rocking.
Well, and I believe that some people question the fact that there's Durban in there, and I totally firmly believe that anise, that licorice, comes from Durban.
Oh, okay.
Unmistakably, because the Durban we had that same licorice in it, right?
Oh, cool.
From the Bay. My friend Josh Freeman, he's the one who brought down seeds of Durban from Canada that he'd gotten up there with my other friend Joe. And that was the anise. And I feel like first time I smelled cookies, I was like, whoa, that reminds me of the Durban. And next thing you know, they're saying, oh, it's Durban in there. I'm like, 100%. I agree that it's probably Durban in there that gives it that anise.
Oh, cool.
But the original cookies we got wasn't the forum cut. It wasn't the Thin Mint. It was just the cookies. My buddy Paulie had gotten it from, I think $5,000 for the cut. He'd gotten it from the Hydro Shop that was in Berkeley, I believe on 4th Street, right by I think there's a a pet shop that sold lizards and stuff like that right there. But anyway, there was a guy that sold it to him, and then he got it for our group, and we shared it. But it was this crazy cookies that was really small producing, but it reminded me of OG in the sense that the node spacing was terrible. And if you didn't support it up, it would just spaghetti over. So, but yeah, and it was so strong, and half a pound of light was what we were getting yield wise, right? And I still grew it for half a pound of light when we were all, we had other stuff at the time that would yield a lot more.
Right. Yeah, no, I like that. I made some things out of it. It was, I still have that cut. That's the cut that I'm still holding. And
right.
It's a special one. It obviously made it this far. It's not just the branding that made it this far.
Well, it made it into everything. All the new shit has cookies in it. Like
For
literally
sure.
all the stuff that we're smoking now that has purple, there's cookies in there.
Right, for sure.
So as much as people want to hate on stuff, it's like they hate on stuff for the wrong reason. The other thing that gets me right now is purple weed is so popular when I feel like when I'm phenohunting the expressions that are louder in the same progeny, we'll have green and purple in different hues, but the more green it is, the usually louder they are.
For sure.
So people want what they can't have. They always want the anomalies. And I think we value stuff that's not necessarily important. And part of that's social media, but
totally. Do you find that the green versus purple in the hashing and everything that you're like, there would be more hash potentials in purples or more hash potentials in greens, because I've been seeing a lot of the greener stuff that I work with is pretty greasy.
Yeah.
And, like the OGs and stuff like that. Some
the
of them
sours and the OGs are super greasy with hash. Yeah.
and
so, rosin.
Yeah. So the SPSC 89, my buddy Buck, he made some amazing rosin out of it, amazing hash, full melts and everything. But the yields weren't like as much, but
right.
Versus like, say, if you're doing some, more animal mints or something like that, that's just like fucking all trichomes and a little more,
totally.
Waxy. But
well, then there's the GMOs that just dump and dump and dump,
right.
And that's a terp that I can get sick of, that I really like, but I can get sick of it because it's just it's so strong. And it's good, but like they put it in everything. And then I like the original GMOs. I mean, I like Chem D, to be honest. I really like it's like, I feel like it's not as loud as GMO, but it's very nostalgic for me. I get that smell and it reminds me of the 90s.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I got some in there. I got, really the AJ Sour Diesel reminds me of GMO a little bit mixed with OG. It has that kind of little more rank smell,
totally.
And
that's the sour D cut that's going around now more than anything. The sour D that's more citrusy, that's bright, that's really loud in the bag with its complexity is the one that I grew up with.
Yeah, same. Yeah, when I got this AJ Sour D from Crazy Composer Dave, I was like, bro, is this normally just like GMO smelling, like OG GMO smelling? He's all, oh yeah, that's this one. I was like, well, that's not the one that was going out here forever.
Right.
He's all, no, it's not.
No, and I believe that sour is a bag seed from Chem 91. There's lots of different theories on it. There's different stories about who bred it, and they're in my book if people want to read it. But just from what I've seen with the dog butt that we had, with the sours that I've grown, and similarly, the lab results that I've seen in fingerprinting, and we were talking about homozygosity earlier,
right.
And you look at the S1s as being typically more homozygous, and you can look at ChemDog, and then you can look at these other and how it pans out on paper. It's really interesting, but and there are a lot of these are very similar in homozygosity, and so there's a good chance, in my opinion, that it's just an S1, and a really special S1. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, some of the best things are bag seeds that we find.
Well, I mean, and single bag seeds, not like you accidentally pollinated something, but when you just find a couple seeds,
those are the best.
Yeah,
those are my favorite too, and I still have collections. I think the real smokers are the ones that find the real bag seeds, and that's where the real magic is at.
Totally. And then, and I mean, I'm kind of esoteric with this whole thing. So maybe that's just the plant offering certain people the jewel, offering them something that they're going to steward properly.
You're getting that pearl,
getting it. And like, here's your offering for being such a devoted,
Yeah. And, talking about devotion, I think that's really the direction this industry is. The people that are thriving, the old school people, especially because they're devotional, right? They're devoted to this plant. Stewards, we can talk about stewards. But as far as a devotion, like whether you're a musician and you're devoted to music, or whether you're devoted to this plant, when it becomes devotional, where you wouldn't do this no matter what happens, whether it's illegal, legal, where there's money or no money, that's when the special stuff happens.
For sure. And I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced it over the last little bit of years, of like, different kind of things going which way or another or whatever. It's like, kind of some fears or whatever kind of come into play. And, really it's like, fuck, man, there ain't nothing else to do, except work with this plant. I'm in there for the rest.
I'm in there for the rest too. Well, and it's funny because once mushrooms got more popular, they kind of went mainstream about 5 years ago. Totally. People were like, dude, you should start breeding mushrooms. This is 2018.
Right.
And people were like, dude, you should start breeding mushrooms too. You like breeding. Why aren't you breeding mushrooms? And then I had some friends that were getting some spots, 30,000 square foot warehouse. And I'm like, I've already went through this with cannabis, dude. I don't want to start over, man. I feel like this is my life's calling. And I love cooking and I love cannabis. Those are the two main things I have in my life that I feel like I'm good at. Something that I've devoted my whole life to. And then taking on mushrooms, I enjoy mushrooms as a spectator. From the outside, I love mushrooms and I love plant medicine and I think it's so special. But as far as like what I'm going to devote my time to and my energy, cannabis is where it's at. Cannabis is where it's going to end up. And I love it. I love being part of the community. I love this community. I just love the community as a whole.
For sure. I mean, it's a really special community too. Yeah. It's so... for myself, I kind of feel the same way. And like, as you do with the cooking and the herb, it's like, these are really tangible things that we can entangle our intentions into, like, actually. And it's, right. Just look at, our grandmothers or mothers or fathers or, even with Master Emoto with, Hidden Messages of Water and all these kind of, or, that old book, Secret Life of Plants, right. This is some esoteric information that we all understand. Meaning like when someone really loves us and we consume something from that person, shit's noticeable. Right. And we feel it. And, if you don't, then, you should be more aware because it's like really obvious in a lot of ways, and I think this plant and cooking is something that really is, we can, it acts as a server of that intention and love and compassion that we're sharing ourselves, and our entanglement of something with this very special thing, whether it be food or the sacred wisdom plant, it's, we're very lucky to be able to even be conversing about this, really.
Totally. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And then when you're able to share that energy with somebody else and they get it, it's just so much better too. And there's a whole community of people that get it, which is great.
For sure.
So a lot of it in Oregon. I'm from Oregon originally. I have a lot of good friends from Oregon. A lot of great people in our industry are either transplants that live there now or have lived there in their past. There's something special about Oregon. I feel like it has one of the best climates in the world. But it's also the mindset of the people that live in Oregon.
Totally. And the water, we got really good clean water up there. And
clean water, yep, with lithium in it in some places.
So, and the mindset, obviously with the Oregon Country Fair and, like the kind of Eugene community of what was created there and that kind of spread through. And
just the Grateful Dead influence on Oregon. I love California too. Don't get me wrong. I'm here in California. I love it. I love the West Coast. I love Seattle. But there's definitely something special about Portland all the way down to Ashland.
Right. Well, I mean, when we talk about stewardship of genetics, it's like it was happening there and it was happening long before I started growing. That's for sure. If I'm growing in end of 96, 97, and people have been doing it for decades prior to that. And like, some really global reputable breeders coming through there, picking up genetics, taking them back to, Europe and doing the thing. And, I just feel like I got blessed with synchronicity really, and just kind of had my ears open and mind open at the right times. And luckily, with that community and bringing the right people together to where you can glean what you can and obviously work with this plant in ways. Cause, when I moved to Eugene, I was kind of a violent guy. I got in a lot of fist fights, half Korean, half white, moved around every couple of years. So kind of, didn't like bullies and kind of, when you come to Eugene, it's like, it was, we were doing a lot of, we were growing and, doing a lot of hustling in pools. So you get kind of rowdy and you take someone for $100 or something. And, you get kind of this thing, and that community really helped with the plant, just kind of nullify a lot of that, by go this direction, don't go that direction, and the whole atmosphere of the community is like that. If you're being a punk, it's not as cool. If you're being, altruistically minded or at least not harming others, that's more cool, and that Oregon community is really,
I like that about Oregon for sure, and especially about Eugene. And Eugene has its own vibe too. I mean, each community, whether it's Medford, Eugene, Portland, the coast. There's places on the coast that are amazing too. They all have their own energy and vibe. But there's something special about Eugene. Even the food scene in Eugene is kind of special.
No, for real. My buddy owns this place called Party Downtown, and it's he started a little food truck by Friendly Street Market. My other, friend's lady owns a Friendly Street Market, and it's just basically like all these kind of hip, younger, our age kind of grew up there or been there a lot, wanted to bring the goodness there, and and there it proliferates. People accept it and support it when it's good, and because Oregon has a weird snobbiness and like a snobbish kind
when
of.
When it comes to beer and food trucks, for sure.
Well, I mean, look at Portlandia. They made a whole movie about it, or a whole like TV show about it, and that shit's real. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like the Will Ferrell with the chicken farm thing or whatever. It's like that. I mean, that's the vibe in a lot of ways there, because people are so, if it isn't perfect and it isn't tasty and it isn't heady and it isn't like, it's not cool. And even like, late 90s, early 2000s there, if your weed wasn't at a certain level, there's no sense on pulling it out, because it's going to be obvious that you're not going to get like shunned, but
you might get shunned.
You might, all these like the glass culture and that nature when people are, the finest of the fine organics.
No Chinese glass up there. It was years before Chinese glass actually made it into Oregon.
Well, shoot, man, it's like really, it was a unique scene there, and really, really special scene with all the, Snodgrass family, like the 420 parties where all the kids come and before they'd go out on tour and, for the summer for all the, jam band shows and
all the good stuff, man. All the good stuff. Yeah. And the Grateful Dead influence, on our whole community is just so profound and so big. And it's a positive impact, some things in the industry, there's negative impact from big business and stuff like that. And there's some positive, but mostly bad. But Grateful Dead, it was only positive, and on the community and within the community and the Grateful Dead community, which they're slightly different, but they're also completely tied in with each other.
For sure.
Rainbow Family, Grateful Dead, all these things, and the cannabis community, it's all tied in together. They have their own niches and their own cliques, but everybody's kind of tied in together because of cannabis.
Totally. And even like you see from the Bay Area to Eugene with the Keezy, pranksters, Dead, all this kind of stuff, and all the, even the Shulgin family and that kind of.
Rest in peace,
yes,
Alexander.
Yes, he's the legend.
Sasha Shulgin, yeah. Totally.
And then even Nick. I was at a party with Sasha and Ann and Nick Sands and all the doctors from Johns Hopkins University when they were working on the mycology stuff. This is like 20 years ago, you know, and I was like, I didn't know. Actually, I was like the weed guy, and I didn't really know. I knew, but I didn't know. When Nick started telling us stories about making 100 grams of orange sunshine a day, and and the kind of, he told us this one story about breaking down the lab, throwing it all in the van, driving it across town, like he's getting chased by the cops. He gets to the safe house, and it's just like he was just tripping. Because
yeah. So Sasha Shulgin was one of my neighbors. He lived in between he lived in Lafayette, but between like Walnut Creek, Pleasant Hill, and then it goes over the hill into Lafayette, and he lived up at the top of there.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, good energy all over that area.
Well, it was crazy to be at that party and to hear, and to see those Johns Hopkins University mycologists are the ones that pushed this whole thing, now totally. Years later, because they slept it for a while because obviously the government and everything. Right. And to hear, Sasha telling the stories of, and then he had like the retired head of the Western Division Forensics of the DEA was there. It was a interesting party. It was, only 50 of us up in near the Bohemian Grove. It was kind of like it's like, did this really happen? You know what I mean? Like really. And I'm like, we're there and, had all the different molecules there and him telling all about it. And just the, him and his two best friends, were there. And, these people were in their late 70s, look like 80s, maybe. And they were with it.
Yeah.
And to be Sasha's quite the legend because it wasn't like he tested it all on himself, if he got high before he got sick, that was good and that good direction to go. And that's some OG shit, bro.
You have to have
max,
serious ball for one thing, but also he believed in it that much. Right. Sure. And so a devotional in the same way we're devotional for cannabis.
Totally.
And his impact, profound.
Imagine the amount of, good feelings that he's brought to fruition in the world and the continuum of, just those couple things and the derivatives of those things even. And
Well, yeah, and it's like I feel like we're an evolution of the Grateful Dead, right? To a degree, and there's an evolution of him that's prevalent around the world. That's
for sure
that he had impact on and still has impact on. And it's amazing when we can pass on that energy, whether it's via cannabis or cannabis seeds or genetics or whatever it is that you
or
do,
even molecular structures,
structures, music. Whatever it is that you do that you love, where you can contribute that part. I mean, that's what life is all about. I think at the end of the day, it's like finding out what you're good at, doing that to the best of your ability so that you're passing on something in the form of an energy to everybody else.
Yeah, like a wisdom energy based in altruism, and really to be able to share that is, I mean, as you just said, it's like a lot of us' life goal here. And once you can actually come to fruition with that, the happiness that is experienced is something quite special and unique,
Yeah, it's something you can't buy. No. The beauty of it is you can't buy it.
No way, not even, it's not in the same realm. It's just like, even with marketing and advertising, some of this stuff, you can buy advertising, but some of the stuff you can't, and the history and the time and the people's commitment and devotion, like you say, it's like, that's an unbought thing. And that's something that happens spontaneously, organically, and naturally in the human mind. That's one of our special traits here,
Yeah, and happiness is such an interesting thing because I think happiness comes from devotion a lot of times. And I think happiness, a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to work. I'd be happy if I didn't work. And I feel like I'm the opposite. I think that work is what makes me happy. Being able to do what I do every day, that makes me happy. I'm super happy that I'm able to do that stuff. And hard work keeps us out of trouble. Hard work is so, I think hard work is great. And, I think when we're committed to one thing and devotional, we can, almost with blinders on, that's when you can find real happiness on a different level. And then work doesn't seem so tough. It's still work. And, we're getting older. So like our bodies get more beat up every year a little bit. But, as far as like happiness is very subjective.
Totally. I mean, like really if that was most of our focuses and what we're doing was based in that kind of momentum of, happiness, altruism, compassion, love, these kind of things that would really like, as a society, as a community, as a peoples, if we focus on that, generate more of that and just do what we love, really, I think the ripple effects of that, it's like, it's world changing, and I think that we're actually seeing that in real time because all of us and even the generations before us, because we're kind of in that weird interim generation of cannabis, it seems like, because there's the ones in their, 60s, 70s, 80s past, and then us in our 40s or whatever. And then, the sets below us. But, we really, it's really something's quite special that we got to take this torch on, and we really, I remember like when Michael Bacchus, Morpheus, with, he had a doctor chemist, Mark, and they wanted me and Mark to get together to run Montel's greenhouse in DC, that first big one, and I was like, why does he, I said, bro, why do you want me, dude? Like I'm just like grow boutique level organic flower. Like it's all, no, bro, we want you for your intuitional ability. We want to put you with Mark. He's a doctorate chemist, and what happens there, then that's what we're looking for. And I was like, so then I took that back home to Oregon, I'm like, well, if they want me here, then I'm going to take this back to Oregon and help the government, like with this process. And, it's funny. We got the Gordon Country Fair that was basically Grateful Dead kind of was the band. Hell's Angels was security back in the day. And now it's like what it is, a little more corporate, obviously. But like, the senator, one of the backup managers there, a good friend of mine. And, that's how I got in contact with the government system because he's a senator and he's basically one of the main champions of, he, was a champion for medical, got it to go, and champion for these kind of, next bills that went. And so I went back and contacted him and got in contact with him, and he kind of put me under his wing and had me help him how I can. Alec from SC Labs getting me all the pesticide information to get the right things on the rule list, like, like so a lot of people don't understand, we might be like a brand or, us sitting here, they recognize us maybe for seeds or genetics or high-end organic flower or whatever. But the reality is we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes a lot of the times to really help this momentum happen and continue to happen by getting proper laws put in place, getting proper stewardship in the ways that at least the government can understand that someone that smokes all day, every day can be accountable, can be, eloquent, can be aware, intelligent, high IQ. These things happen without any hindrance from this plant, and actually expression of awareness through the plant. And they can, and that's really helped, I think, because I saw we went and consulted U.S. Finance Committee, U.S. Congress in D.C., it's like multiple politicians there and everything. It's like, they wanted to hear from us because we can speak awarely. We can do these kind of things with the plant in a way that was out of their understanding at the time, in the, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16. Now it's like, oh yeah, they're like, oh yeah, all these smart people smoke weed. No big deal,
Totally. Well, yeah, I mean, people are kind of slow to get it, but this plant makes the world a better place, at the end of the day, and it's funny because I think even my parents' generation, they had a hard time with me wanting to be involved with cannabis growing and everything. I was pretty honest with my parents, especially they'd come and visit us and stay at our house. And I'd be like, we got plants in the garage. And my dad's like, oh yeah, you got plants? I'm like, I got plants in the garage. I just want to let you know I got plants. He's like, you have plants. Oh. And, it's like, but it was kind of a shock. And then he was kind of disappointed. He was pretty impressed with the, our carpentry skills and everything else. But he was a little bit worried about the legality of it and me getting in trouble. And then Sanjay Gupta, comes on 60 Minutes and he changed the world in a whole different perspective, showing kids that benefited from cannabis.
For sure.
And from cannabinoids. And I think
for sure,
it's hard to argue that this plant doesn't make the world a better place. I'm working in St. Vincent and the Grenadines out in I work with the government down there. I donated 30,000 seeds and I created a strategy that should help infuse a lot of money in the community if they do their own breeding on the island and they have an identity for export. And I think that the potential for that is huge, but the government down there is very in support of using the plant to make the world a better place and their community a better place. And I love
amazing. That. Yeah, that's really in my opinion, the plant's intention. I know it's just a plant and whatever, but for us to have such a high receptor base for the cannabinoid molecules, and even like a lot of our favorite animal, like the dog, has one of the largest cannabinoid receptor systems of all animals, for it to be our, co-pilot in a lot of this it's like, there's something special about this plant that's on a deep level,
right?
And that we're all seeing it and sharing it and being a part of it. I mean, I don't hear anyone being like, oh no, man, like, unless, you have people who like to drink a lot of booze seem like they have a kind of issue with weed, if they, alcoholics or whatever, they don't like to smoke weed because maybe it makes them
drink less.
Yeah,
it makes them drink less.
They're like, no, it's like what I always say with like alcohol, it's like kind of like cordyceps in an ant's brain, it's like the alcoholism is going to basically manipulate you and coerce you to doing its task. You know what I mean? Right. And weed comes in the thing that's going to make you drink less. Yeah. And so that's a problem. Yeah. The weed is, because the alcohol wants to be a part of it more, so it's like, no, less alcohol, no weed then, Right. It's like, I've noticed that kind of correlation. People that drink too much, they don't like to get high, because I get a weird trip, a weird head trip, I'll get anxious, or it's like, yeah, man, you for sure will.
Yeah. I think for sure if you smoke first and then drink, you're going to drink way less.
Totally.
And you might get sick if you're a drinker and then you just an occasional smoker. You might get sick if you smoke too. Like at the end, you might get the spins or whatever.
Totally.
But, it's like, but I think you definitely drink less when you're smoking. Like that's just across the board.
For sure.
And I do have friends that crossfade a little too much,
We all do. Yeah. We all have the, it's,
sure.
It's really like moderation is key with everything, even with cannabis, and because, once our receptors are full, they're full. And, how much more you need really, actually, you don't need to waste it. You can,
for sure,
there's a, it's like, you get it when you're just smoking hash after hash and rosin and hash. At a certain point, it's just like, it's all flavor, because they ain't nothing much more happening.
You're not going up any higher. There are certain things, Durban poison being one of them in Malawi, that don't have ceilings where you can just keep smoking. You can go places you never thought you could go.
You're like, this feels like LSD.
Yeah, exactly. I've been there before. Or edibles, from some of the African genetics. It's like, wow, you just you do get a psychedelic experience. And there's people that'll argue it, but I've been there. So I know firsthand, and I've done plenty of psychedelics. So I know in comparison, like I've had more of a psychedelic experience with some of these varieties with edibles, drinking Bang, where they mix it with hot milk.
For sure. Well, that was what they're, a lot of the Buddhist practitioners way back, there's, certain practices where that's just in combination with the practice,
Yeah.
A little bit of bong, whole bottle. Go into their retreat cave and, do
Start
their meditation.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, whoa, it's, I used to make this back in the day, we'd just pack a crock pot with sugar leaf.
Oh yeah.
And then just put olive oil in there and do like a slow cook on it through the day. And then just, extract that, basically just pour that off and filter and just take spoonfuls, and like, 1 teaspoon, you're like, 1 tablespoon, like one time my buddy's like, took like 3 tablespoons. He calls me the next day. He's all, bro, I swear my heart stopped. And it was beating like 1 time every couple minutes,
Yeah. Oh, I've been there. Yeah. Back in the 90s, there wasn't a ton of literature. There was like 1 book on the chemistry of it, but we really liked exploring and trying different stuff. And we had all this trim always, right? So we would make tinctures and we would do Bacardi 151 and put it on the, double burner and cook it in there. And we had different ways of making butter and everything else, but we had so much extra trim that it was always like, well, what can we do with it now? And this was, then we started making bubble hash and that all changed. So it's like, totally. Now we got extract all the time.
Well, it's even making the tinctures out of bubble hash or like, the 220 or the whatever, the 160s fluff, you'd like take all that and dry it and make the tincture out of that. And like,
for sure.
That's like, what I like to do is I like to heat the material just a little bit before. Cause like when I make the tincture, when I don't heat it, it kind of does the fermentation thing and starts to like expand shit.
Right. And then you decarb it right from the beginning. And,
You decarb it when it's in flour form or in hash form and then put that to the extract. And it's like just a little easier to work with, I found.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, we always used to make different stuff and different drinks and cocktails, and we never knew the milligrams back in the day. You just, you would be rushing.
You knew off the first shot, like how
somebody knew off the first. Yeah, like sometimes even the first 15 minutes. Some of the stuff
when your face starts getting crunchy and hot or something, you're like, oh, that was a little stronger.
You start getting purple. The only time that happens is when I eat peppers. Peppers are strong tinctures.
Dude, I love. I mean, that's what I like. I used to just carry around a bottle of tincture because like. 3-4 drops under the tongue, and you're like, wow, gets like you're saying that, because they do say that like cannabinoids through the body, through the stomach, through the, that kind of whole system is going to create more of a psychedelic experience, at a certain range, and if you've eaten enough, if you've, 100, 200, whatever milligrams,
1,000, 500, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's like, it starts to happen.
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of people with cancer and everything. And, obviously with tinctures and stuff like that. And, I've talked to this one woman, she had, I forgot what it's called. I think some transmarginal neuralgia type of brain cancer that was on the optic nerve and brainstem, very severe pain one. I think that's also termed as suicide disease because it's so bad, and
wow.
I gave her the medicine and, and I told her, she's like, well, how much do I take? I was like, as much as you can, and you're trying to get to 1 gram a day. And she's like, oh, I'm kind of scared, and I said, yeah, it'll be scary, but are you more scared of the medicine or are you more scared of what happens if,
Right.
And what's crazy is she took the medicine and at that dose and in 5 weeks, she called me frantic, heard this pop in her head, went to the doctor, got CAT scans, MRIs. And there was just halos where those tumors were. They were one was the size of a like apricot, small apricot. The other one was the size of a ping pong ball.
Oh man!
And gone,
Amazing.
And she told me, she's like, the beginning was really hard because the amount. And when you're having a terminal illness, there's a lot of other things psychologically going on.
Right.
When you're at that level of being high and your fear of deaths and these things, like the very mortal things happen. And, and she told me, but then it kind of eased off and had this experience. And, it's sick. That was, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years ago, and still watch her on Facebook with her husband. They did,
amazing.
Coffee shop, watched her daughter graduate college, and like to be able to, we have lots of, and I'm sure you do too, lots of, stories like that. And it's no fucking better blessing than that, to
totally.
be able to see that and to share that and to, share our experience of creating this medicine in a, holistic way to where, where it does make the world a better place.
And I think a lot of us, even an extra day, one extra day longer, it's all worth it, right? And if cannabis can give you that extra day, because I've had friends that have used cannabis and lost their battles,
Totally.
And I've had friends that have beat cancer with cannabis. And so, and maybe it's not right for every type of cancer, but it's worth exploring. And I think the other thing is it is scary. If you're not a cannabis user going into trying cannabis, you have cancer, that's scary enough. And now you got to take this drug that a lot of times seems scary on the outside. And a lot of times you have to build your tolerance up to it. A gram a day is a lot.
Wow.
It's a wow, but, and my friend,
take you a month to build up,
Yeah. My friend, Dave Mesford, he lost the battle. He fought for, I think 4 years. And he was taking a gram a day and he built up to that tolerance, but like, that's a lot. I think he was at 2 grams a day at one point.
Wow.
And that's a lot. And, but if you can get an extra day or an extra month or an extra year of life, I think that's amazing.
For sure. It's worth every aspect of it, because we don't understand that, like, that's what people, there's a lot of this chase, but really in those last phases, it's going to be family, how you treated people, like how you were loved, how you love. And those are going to be the important things. And one thing about this plant, it shows you that too. Right. It can show you that before those, more terminal phases even, and if we utilize it as a holistic medicine, it can be as a preventative in some ways, just in our own psyche, right. Feeling more love, acceptance, these kind of things,
Yeah, it's a great way to deal with trauma, and some people, people use alcohol to escape and to tune out, whereas I feel like plant medicine, psychedelics, cannabis especially, tunes us in, right? It tunes you into music. It tunes you into reality. It tunes you back into what's important. Totally. And that's why we're here today.
For sure. And that's, I think that is one of the big beauties of the plant is the, just like it does in our body, the connectivity it does in community, and the reach and what it's, look at it, it's what's happened to the world right now with cannabis. It's, at one point it was a huge facet in our industrial formulation and agricultural formulation of humanity, right? And kind of then got pushed under the rug, intentionally, unintentionally. But it couldn't be held back.
Right.
And now it's over. The whole globe is infatuated with it in a way that it's like, maybe this is one of our last great hopes, to evolve humanity as a race, to give us fuel, food, and, structural building tools to actually change this kind of continuum of what we've created. It has everything.
Well, it's such a complete part of our existence, and totally. It can be used for so many different things besides healing and all the other things that are, obvious to us, I guess, maybe not to other people, but very obvious to us as far as building. Totally. We can build with it. We can build houses with it. Right. We can build concrete.
Flame retardant, hempcrete.
Yeah, there's so many things, they've been using it for rope for the longest time and textiles and
even I heard the first Ford like Model A, all the fabrics and the plastics were made of hemp.
Yeah. Well, hemp is it lasts so much longer than cotton. Nobody in the cotton industry wants to hear it, but and that's, it's a superior product on so many levels.
For sure.
And it's a perfect protein. If we look at it, the protein and the fats, the quality of nutrition that it can give us and give to places that, are malnourished. I think there's just so much potential for it.
Yeah, I think the potential is really limitless. We barely cracked the surface on it, in my opinion, and what we're going to do and what you're seeing, because a lot of people are on, Instagram, but you go to LinkedIn and, you're like, holy shit, there's like professionals doing like real professional shit on here, like at huge levels, it's
some of these scientists just, even in breeding, you hear stuff on my show, we talk a little bit about data-driven breeding, but the potential for breeding and marker-driven breeding, it's like for traits and for drug discovery.
Totally.
That gets me excited. I think plant medicine, full spectrum plant medicine as a whole, it's like we were on this trajectory that was completely the opposite of that, where they're like, oh, you just take this one molecule and it'll hopefully kill you for this, but look at all the side effects.
Right.
And now we're like, oh, well, we have this full spectrum thing that has no side effects or very minimal side effects that does all these different things. And we can use that and go in all these different directions once we start understanding it better.
Totally. And I think that's the beauty of right now, what's happening. Even, at the conference, I was talking to Guy Martin, and he was telling me all these different things of, basically the science of seeing all these different markers that are released from different sugars, light, whatever. And you can manipulate the genetic cycle, the plant's growth, all this stuff just through these, different markers. It's like, and imagine the range of those. Cause I was telling him, it's like, okay, if this is just structural in, say, conventional farming, what about, say, like non-conventional farming, where you do have living soil biome and all these kind of things, the enzymatic response and all that. And that's creating more of these factors.
Right.
And there's more, just the net of factors and the range of possibilities, it just keeps growing.
Yeah.
You're just like, wow.
What chemotyping can totally change, It's like, and that's what people don't understand. It's like, we've got our phenotypes that everybody understands. We've got the genotypes that are hidden inside, and then we've got the chemotype expressions that we're looking for, these chemical expressions that get changed, that can be changed by the environment. They can get changed by the nutrition, just like the phenotype can.
Well, that's what, like, when Phylos come online in the beginning and everything, we started working with them and gave them all the OGs that we had, whether it be Kosher Kush, Ghost OG, Fire OG, Sour Best Shit Ever, Skywalker OG, and, that headband that was the OG one, and they're like, this is all the same cut.
Yeah, the same OG.
I'm like, oh, I don't know, man, because the highs are different. They, and I kept them really healthy, and so where they weren't having like morphology issues through degradation and stuff. And they're, I'm like, still to this day, I'm like, I don't know if they're the same cut or if they're S1s, but they're really close.
Well, I'll tell you, the Josh D and the Ghost, they had the same cut. They went through different paths, right? And then I got them back and grew them side by side, and they grew very differently. But they were definitely related. Like they seemed
just
related.
Like that Lupa's headband cut's the same. It's
all the same. And so we had the headband cut that our friend Noel had brought. So he's the one that brought it to NorCal as headband. He had got it from Josh, and Josh was like, "You can't call it OG," and so he called it headband. And he lied to us for years, and we all called it headband, but it was just the Josh DOG, and it yielded really well. And the Ghost that I had didn't yield nearly as well, but.
Like the Skywalker OG I have yields amazing. It's like, that G cut one, whatever.
Chunky,
huge, chunky, crowned out, The SBSE
stacks really well. Yeah.
Dude. The SBSE kind of looks similar, but doesn't stack as but for me, there is high differences. And, so I'm like, okay.
Well, and epigenetic changes that probably happen along the way because people have put their energy into it, right? And then along with, bacteria, there's like systemic bacteria that's in the plant. There's all these things that happen to the life of
techniques of horticultural,
expression. And stressors, right? So we have stress, whether it's pest or whether it's pathogen or environmental. We have these stressors that are going to manipulate the plant. And, to say it's the same plant after it goes through these paths in different directions, it's not the same plant. So tissue culture, whether it can take it back, there's the argument of, okay, well, we can take off these epigenetic changes. I don't believe that fully. And they're studying methylation now and some different things.
Okay.
And, but it's all exciting. And I think we're just scratching the surface of it.
Sure.
And in 10 years, we're going to know a lot more about the plant. We're going to know a lot more about ourselves. And we're in this beautiful place, dude. Like, I feel like we're in the infancy of something that's going to be long-standing, that's going to have great impact over the next 100, 200, 300 years if we're alive as mankind. As long as we're alive, we're going to have impact on the future.
Totally. I mean, even look at like, the Chinese pharmacopoeia from, pre-2000 or over 2,000 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Where the plant was, they called it the plant of 100 cures or something, had more medicinal uses than any other plant in the book.
Right.
Back then to where we're now 2,000 plus years later, still talking about that book then, and it being representative of what this plant can offer in, pre-industrial times.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge, and when we're discovering that, okay, first agricultural set of cannabis was in Tibet, they're finding now, when they just discovered, they're like, well, this predates what we knew before. So they were obviously growing this for some reasons back then already, you know? And, I think that just like with the dog and these things, you know, certain plants helped our agricultural kind of evolution in ways that other plants didn't, you know. And these medicinal plants, like even you look at ayahuasca, you know, who knew to combine Monasteriopsis caapi and chacruna, these two plants together to make this potion, right? Who told them that? How did that get discovered? You know, so like, even like when, you know, I was like 6 years old, I'm in Nebraska, right? In Lincoln. These plants were in this dude's backyard, you know, me and my friend, my neighbor friend, we just see him, you know, and I was like, they were fucking calling me, you know, and I'm like, what? I jumped the fence, ripped them all out the ground, took them back to my house, had one of those blue little plastic swimming pools, put them in there, filled it with water. And me and my friend were just like, chuck, 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 with our feet barefoot, tromping on it, you know?
Yeah.
My dad comes out and is like, what the fuck? You know, like military guy, you know, like, you know, and so, and he, you know, he didn't smoke weed. He didn't, you know, he smoked cigarettes, but didn't like, you know, there was no reference of drug culture, nature, anything like that. But there's this thing that's saying like, you're attracted to me, you know? And so, you know, as societies and tribes and cultures over millennia, how much has that plant guided our evolution, you know? And here we are into this phase of the most technical time of humanity. I mean, in current, you know, day. And here's this plant fully embedded and entangled all of it, you know?
Well, it's so strange that the prohibition happened when it happened.
Right.
And like right when technology's kicking off, there's this cannabis prohibition, you know, it's like, and it's right around the same time that technology kind of boomed.
Right.
So, totally. But, and then now, you know, 50 years later, or 40 years later, we're coming back to it and understanding that, hey, it's not such a bad thing. It actually makes the world a better place. And it's something that needs to be studied.
For sure. I mean, even like, you know, you can see what it does. Even myself, you know, I was super aggressive when I was younger and, you know, and it just rounded the edges, you know, and it really helped me see myself in a way that I didn't need to be aggressive. I didn't need to be that guy. I can be softer, more patient, you know, more understanding. I can be less arrogant and, you know, less of an egomaniac. And I can see those things. And the plant really shows you that, you know, really, you know, like, it's like if you say something that was maybe self-centered or rude or something, you smoke some weed and everyone's gone, you'll be thinking about that thing.
Right.
You know, and you'll be thinking that wasn't the right thing to do and say. Why? Because this plant, you know, it's doing its best to make it better, you know?
For sure. Well, and on a deeper level, I think that we are who we are because of the experiences we've had and the trauma that we've had. And so we all have this unique lens that we see the world through. And then when you're able to smoke cannabis, some of those traumas can kind of get moved over here. And then we can see the world how it really is. I mean, I think psychedelics will even do that further. They'll take more of those filters off. And then you're like, whoa, because ego really makes us not necessarily who we are, but ego can totally screw us up, you know,
for sure.
And make us see the world from a completely different perspective, have negative impact.
Totally.
And the more we can kind of strip away that ego, the more we can become good people and make the world a better place. So
for sure. I mean, it lies to us consistently, you know, to get what it needs, which it wants to be permanent. It wants to be stagnant. It wants to be there.
Yeah.
And, you know, the freedom doesn't happen there, you know? And so like, if we can, you know, utilize this plant, step back, see the ego, see its entanglement of aversion, of attachment, and what it's kind of doing to our brain, you know, and through a fear response or a, you know, desire response or something. And so if we can see that by just, you know, stepping aside.
Well, ego so desperately wants you to feel special. You know, you want to feel special. Ego tells you that you need to be special, that you need to be different.
That you deserve it.
That you deserve to be special or that you deserve to be different than everybody else. And really, I think our job is to just come here, do what we're best at to the best of our ability and try to leave something good for everybody else behind.
Totally. And I mean, I think, you know, we have this term called Bodhichitta, you know, which is the altruistic mind that wishes to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all other beings, you know? And, you know, there's a being called a Bodhisattva, which has taken that mind as its core essence of, you know, experience here and really altruistically tries to help others in a way that's ultimate, you know? And I think this plant really, you know, can help that. And that is where the true happiness will come from.
Yeah.
You know, when we're not based in our arrogant, egoic entanglement, and we can step back and see things altruistically and really help others, you know.
Yep.
There's this saying, for as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And and that's kind of the essence of the Bodhisattva mind, which really this plant, in my eyes, fully entangles that essence. And everyone, that it doesn't matter what you believe, what you think, what you eat, what you drink. Usually people that consume cannabis, when they do it, they feel better.
Right.
They feel happier.
Well, they whether they know it or not, they're on the path to spiritual enlightenment. And I love
Totally,
that, right?
totally.
And the whole Bodhisattva, the principles behind it, I think it's amazing, because spiritual enlightenment is something that, whether you know you're on that path or not, if you're smoking cannabis or you take plant medicine, you're on that path.
For sure, because that evolution process is something that most of us are not going to escape in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
It's really, I think, the human nature.
Right.
And I think it's all beings' nature, actually. And because you can see that even if you put a flame towards a bug, it's going to go away from the flame, not into the flame.
Right.
So even on an ant level, it doesn't want to suffer.
Right.
And you can see that the reason most people are doing the things they're doing is because they don't want to suffer. And they think that they're going to do the things that are going to eliminate that suffering, or they're not going to suffer,
right.
But most of us are doing the things that make us suffer because we are not informed, but I think if people really focus on love, compassion, and really, selflessness, which happens from mindfulness, you don't have to be in your thought pattern of your ego, of what you're trying to convince your brain to believe through being special, or, if you can just be in a breath and be aware. Because we can be
and shut that off. A lot of times, most people don't even know how to do that, I think. And it took me a long time of even trying to do that before I learned how to shut it off, like to where I'm living in the moment, I'm living in that breath.
Totally. That flow state mind really, like, if you're an athlete or high level athlete or musician, you can really relate with it well, but it's similar,
Jiu-jitsu changed my mind.
Oh,
with that,
for sure.
It changed my life for that, especially that flow state, and combining it with cannabis is another one where
all the jiu-jitsus love cannabis.
Yeah. and the reason everybody that does jiu-jitsu or martial arts, I think a lot of guys, because you can get in that state where you're not thinking, you're just reacting, and you're moving and flowing without having to think about what am I doing next. Because the second you start thinking about what you're doing next, you're going a lot slower than you would if you're just reacting and flowing.
Totally. Without a doubt. It's like,
and I'm not even that good at jiu-jitsu, right? I'm not good at all at jiu-jitsu, but I love jiu-jitsu, and I love what it does for my body and for my mind. And it's something that I need to do a lot more of. So
yeah, no, it's a really amazing thing. I wrestled, all through school and stuff, and did some jits, and my kid did some jits, and like it's that anything that you're going to be doing an intense active sport, that you have to, like you said, you have to be mindful and, present, and not be thinking, or you're not going to perform well, whether it be surfing, snowboarding, like deep powder in trees, or climbing, it's all these things take a focus that if you're thinking, don't get me wrong,
a lot of it's preparation.
Climbing's analytical, but like it's less flow state. But I've seen my friend that climbs, free solo, like, 500,000 foot stuff free solo. That dude's in the flow state and he ain't thinking, he's like,
well, it's the same thing cooking on the line when you're working in a kitchen, or when you're cooking, or whether you're doing jiu-jitsu, it's all about preparation, right? So if you're prepared, even growing to a degree, like if you're prepared ahead of time, you're going to have a lot better results. You might get lucky. You might get lucky in jiu-jitsu. You might get lucky in the kitchen, but if you're not prepared, you're not going to have as good of results. And the thing is like, because you don't have to really think about what you're doing. You can flow. Even in the kitchen, you have all your ingredients laid out in front of you. You're going to have a lot better results than if you're scrambling around the kitchen finding stuff, at the last minute.
Without a doubt.
So, and it translates to so many things. Like buying stuff, you go to the grocery shop and they're out of the thing that you needed that day, and that happens all the time. To a lot of people. And it's like, if you're prepared in advance, you're going to have a lot more success.
Totally. Creating that foundation in anything that you're going to basically have success in is clutch,
Right.
and really, understanding the causal nature of things, and then breaking down that formula, and, and getting prepared.
Yep.
It's a huge part of anything especially spiritual practice, cultivation, music, martial arts, any high level sport.
Yeah.
You know, it's like even with surfing, if you can surf and you can be good, but if you're not in shape, you can fucking drown, you know, like with a quick, you know, like it's like you think last time I surfed, I could surf this size, you know, but you get out there and can't paddle and you be like in the impact zone, just like, you know, rethinking life.
Oh yeah.
You know, like,
or you get caught on the wrong side of a set and you have another wave crashing on you and it's all bad.
Yeah, no, you really get as, nothing's, I've climbed a lot of stuff in Yosemite and stuff and, but nothing's, put a, reality check on me more than almost drowning in Big Set or, because it's like you get to a point where you can't even breathe, even though you're above surface, you know, you're so exhausted and winded from holding your breath and like taking beatings that you come up and you're like hyperventilated almost that you can't even breathe, even though you're above the surface. It's like it's an experience.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of water in my lungs before and it's not fun, you know, and thought I was going to die. And I experienced that at a very young age. So kind of, it's funny, those things that you experience at a young age can be really beneficial, especially near-death experiences.
For sure.
You learn how fragile life is to a degree. It took me a long time. You know, I was in my 30s before I really understood, but I understood life a lot more from almost dying as a kid. You know, I almost OD'd as a kid as well. And so I think those kind of things put the experience of life and the fragility of life into perspective a little bit more.
Without a doubt.
You know, I think a lot of us, we were invincible in our 20s, you know. It wasn't until our 30s. You know? Yeah. It's like I think you start losing friends, you know, from everything. And as you get into your 40s, now I'm getting in my 40s, and then I was talking to some of my friends in their 50s, and they're like, yeah, just wait. 50s is where you really start losing your friends. Your health starts to go. You know, your 40s, you might lose your vision a little bit. You know, you might lose your hairline, you know, But yeah, it's interesting. Aging is really interesting. And it's funny, the knowledge that you get over time, it's like the years move faster. Every year seems a little bit faster than the year before. And one of my uncles put it into perspective that, you know, when you're 5 years old, a year is 20% of your life. But when you're 50, you know, it's 1/25 of your life, or 100, it's a 1% of your life, you know? Yeah. So really that's a really bad analogy right there. But like, as far as like every year, it's basically that 1 year is shorter. And so it seems like they just go from one season to the next a lot faster.
Without a doubt, even if you're good at mindfulness practice and breath focus, you know, because I try to stay pretty present and try not to think about, even, you know, my first teacher told me, he's like, bro, your brain's already like clogged up with memories and stuff. He's like, you got to eliminate a lot of that stuff so you can memorize things and makes the space, you know?
Yeah.
But what I realized over the time is, if I'm not looking back on the past and being present and aware in what's happening, time's non-existent. It's like when I look back at the things and the moments and, you know, and the range and how, you know, it seems really quick. But if I start to go from this moment back throughout this day, then yes, you know, like it's quite long and all the experiences are quite rich, you know?
Right.
But if I'm looking from here to there, wow, man, that sucks. You know, I don't like to do that so much.
Thanksgiving to Christmas.
Wow.
It's just, wow. Yeah.
Like even watching my son grow up and everything and start to become a young man and like, fuck, man, it was like, he was so sweet, dude. Like now it's like, you're like, bro, you're like, you don't even want me to hug you in public barely, bro.
Yeah.
You're like,
totally.
You know?
Yeah, it's amazing how fast time passes in some ways and how slow it is in others. And it's all just perception and perspective, you know?
Well, that's the thing is it's, you know, they say from a Buddhist perspective, they don't, you know, they believe time's an illusion, right? And really, because impermanence is a truth. So there's a continual flux in all things. Everything's impermanent. That's a truth. So, you know, all these planetary structures and their movement and everything, they're always in flow and always in a continual flux. So there is no fixed moment, actually. You know, it's like what's happened, what's happening, and what's yet to happen, you know, is how it would be broke down. But time, you know, that's the stagnation that we're trying to fixate our ego wants to make it real, you know, make it stable and make it solid and still, you know, we want it to last forever. And even our point of view, you know, that's the ego wants it to be solid and, you know, this is real, this is truth, you know, but the reality is it's not like you think with most things, you know, even if we're accurate, you know, even like with impermanence, you know, it's a permanent thing. Yeah. You know, there's like 16 some types of permanences, but like impermanence being one of them. But even all the conceptual aspects of it and everything, there's still representations of our awareness and how we're perceiving things. But in its true essence, all those fade away, right?
Yeah.
And it is how it is, and what's happening is what's happening. But once we start to make it relative to our experience and whatever, we're still taking away of the depth and the subtleties of it actually on a true level, at least, in my opinion. It's like really what's crazy is it's so subtle, so vast, so simple, and so deep, all in the same aspects. And time's a good one to kind of get lost in, or the fact that it doesn't exist actually. But
the fourth dimension. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's wild. So I had a psychedelic experience from nitrous oxide when I was a kid. And it's funny because like we talk about nitrous and people think of it hippie crack or whatever,
It's a strong one.
It can be a strong one, and I had a full melt. The first full melt DMT trip I ever had was on nitrous oxide.
Oh yeah. Did they do the combo?
No.
Oh,
No. I got the experience from the nitrous oxide, and I was at a rave.
Oh, wow.
And I was in the VIP area, and there was a beanbag, and someone just handed me a big punching ball balloon. And I had hit this. I'm like, oh, there's a beanbag right there.
Sick,
and
perfect.
I was like, perfect. I had a full melt experience, and I basically went to this place, and I understood everything. Right, stuff that you can't understand. I couldn't put it into words coming back here, but I woke up. And I don't know how long I was out for, but it felt like a very long time. And my friend's like, well, where were you? And I was like, dude, I tried to get all my friends together. Yeah, there was no balloon when I woke up, right? And literally, I had to get all my friends to tell them everything that I understood, because I understood everything. I understood existence. I understood everything, and got my friends together, and I couldn't put it into words. And it was the most frustrating thing ever because I had totally understood it. But in this dimension, in this plane, I could not put it into words because it's more than we can comprehend in this existence. But the one thing I took away from this whole experience, and I was 17 years old, is that we're all going to be okay. And so that stuck with me. I'm 47 now. So that's like literally 30 years ago, I had that, we're all going to be okay. No matter what, in the end, we're all okay.
Totally.
So yeah.
Yeah, man, I remember one time smoking a gram of DMT one night and, got pretty high, obviously, with that, hitting it out the bong, back when we didn't really know how to smoke it as well, like 20 some years ago. And I remember seeing the plant on the table, and the soil and the container and myself. And I remember seeing the plant and me, exact same energy, but the table was different. The soil was a little different and the pot was different, but me and the plant were the same. And I was like, really having that realization that all living things are sharing, the similar type of energy.
Right.
And then they even proved with DMT that they say that all, carbon-based life has DMT in it, and you're like, wow, big lessons come from these psychedelic experiences a lot of times, and we can't really explain the depth of them in a lot of ways. But one thing that this common, thing is that everything's interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
They're all of the same source, energy, source, light, whatever, and there's a similarity that's much larger than a difference.
For sure.
And that's like, it can come in all kinds of different ways and perspectives and, perceptions, but
DMT is so wild because you can have so many different types of trips. It's not just the same experience every time.
It's not like salvia,
No, it's not like, thank God. Thank God. Yeah, salvia is a wicked one, man. It's like, when it comes to plant medicine, salvia is basically not a good starting point for most people.
No, that's like the end point, and maybe you only do it a couple times.
Or once.
Yeah.
You shouldn't start there because you may never want to do anything else ever again.
If you think that's what psychedelics are about, then you probably,
Yeah, for sure. Wild.
Yeah, no, I have the most respect for salvia, actually.
You have to. Yeah, if you don't, you're going to be in big trouble, man. It's like one of those things, it's like, it's wild. So.
It's definitely wild, I was like, well, it's like the opposite of DMT experience, but like similar message,
similar message, different, different path.
Way different approach,
path,
it's
sure.
like, wow. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, psychedelics are pretty wild. And then, mushrooms, it's funny now, mushrooms, people take microdoses now, and I appreciate microdoses. I like microdoses for public speaking and stuff like that. But
yeah, me too.
As far as we never did microdoses back in the day, it was like a half an eighth. if you only could eat a gram, you were like disappointed that you had to share
half
that.
an eighth is the starting point for the real ones. You know?
Yeah, and maybe we had more mild mushrooms. I don't care, but we always had trips. So we weren't taking mushrooms just to feel okay. We were taking mushrooms to experience something that lasted a while, and it changed our state of mind. It wasn't just like, oh, we're not going to drink tonight. We're going to eat a little bit.
You
of
want
mushrooms.
the whole forest to breathe, you know?
Right? Exactly. The ground should be breathing. Everything should be coming alive.
For sure.
So yeah, but it's interesting. They're microdosing LSD. They're microdosing mushrooms. They're doing microdoses of everything, including cannabis. Cannabis is like heavily microdosed now compared to what we were doing when we were younger.
Well, yeah, even the LSD thing, like I've been microdosing for decades because, when you have the vial, I mean, you can get yourself into the trouble, if you're at a show or something, and and then this when I realized it, it's like, oh, every time I remember I was at a Widespread Panic show at the Cuthbert, and it was my friend, and I'm dosing everyone, in little micros, the Clear Eyes bottle, but you don't realize that a drop out of a Clear Eyes bottle is like 3 hits, really, it's like, and so you're just like, you're actually giving real hits, and every time I'll take another. Next thing you know, you don't hear anything, you just seeing all the sound come out in light and can't even talk or think anymore, and it's like, so. Even back then I started microdosing, meaning diluting. Yeah. So it's more safe, so
sure.
You don't have to it's like, oh, you have to take 10 drops actually to get one drop, one hit. So that's like safe, It's
way safer actually. That's a great, the 10 to 1 is a great approach for sure.
You got to get yourself in trouble on purpose with that one. You know, I mean, it's not like you're like even, doing events or doing talks or podcasts. It's like, it's like, are you going to really, you don't need that many. You just take one and then, you have energy too, whatever, but you're not going on stage, you don't want to be like, so it's different, like with the cactus for me, I took cactus every day for like 3 years and, and that was
Did you microdose it too, or?
I guess you could say that, but I would take I would take the same amount now that I'd take if me and the lady are going out for a night and having a good time, whatever. I'm, 5, 10, 15 mils of this gel that my, family makes, very special recipe. And so I took that every day for 3 years of my preliminary stuff, and upper division U of O stuff, and, really utilized it as like, kind of like the Limitless pill, from that movie, totally. It's like, just like microdosing LSD, similar thing. You can, you memorize really well. You have a lot of energy, stamina, awareness, and it can
creativity, outside the box thinking, all that good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. You see a lot of these upper, hedge funds, CEOs or whatever. Those dudes are all microdosing, They're all, all the people, not all, but most people I know at upper echelon thinking and creativity and action, they're on psychedelics. Just
in one form or another, for sure.
And so
now there's so many options too. It's not like back in the day there was like 1 or 2. Now it's like there's a wide spectrum of
for sure. I mean, I hear that even there's MDMA pens. I know there's DMT pens and mushroom pens. Like all these things. You're like, really? And I'll just keep it simple, like how it's always.
Yeah, been, I like old school myself, but it's wild. Everything. It's funny because we've started to go in this direction of convenience, and I do love the pre-roll, hand roll model for cannabis. I'm not a huge hash hole guy. We may do a hash hole in metrics one of these days, but as far as I do like the convenience for the hand roll, but everything's gone into pens. So like rosin carts, I think it's cool. I think rosin carts are good, but you got to use them right away. They don't taste, for me, like rosin carts aren't good after even a couple weeks.
Yeah, even if, the first 10 hits of a rosin cart are all right, but.
Yeah, then it goes downhill really fast. And so you see these 2 gram carts now. I'm like, why would you have a 2 gram cart? Like I would prefer a 0.5 gram cart, especially a rosin cart, a 0.5 gram rosin cart over 2 grams of anything, because after the first gram, it's all garbage. Like I don't want it.
For sure.
And I would much rather have
color change.
Oh yeah. You're like, go from this nice light color to this dark color. Something's going on.
Right.
So yeah, but we do live in this world of convenience. So with everything, people are like, oh, how can I get it easily? And how is it easily accessible? And I understand the pre-roll because I want people to experience the same kind of joint I get to smoke. And I take the time and effort to roll these perfect joints.
Totally.
And I would love to share that with the whole world. I'm like, that excites me.
Totally.
But it gets to a level where they want over convenience.
For sure.
Next thing, it's just a patch. It's like,
totally.
It's like, I just want the cannabis patch.
Right.
And maybe that's for you. That's fine. But that's not, some people, they'll get that and they'll enjoy it. But for me, it's like, there's got to be I like the smoking side of it. I like that whole experience.
The ritual aspect of it. And,
absolutely.
I like roll, how it is. It's like, I mean, that's kind of how, even when I started back in the day, I was, I loved herb.
Yep.
So, you get into high school, way out of high school, you get the ounce, you sell the 3/4 and you keep the quarter. And then you're like, well, I need more. You sell the 4 ounces, you get the ounce. Oh, you sell the, 3/4 of a pound, you keep the quarter pound, all the home, it's like just kind of builds, And so like that aspect is just something that's really, sweet and special, and to really be the one that's having the herb and then rolling the joint and doing the thing and being that kind of provider,
right?
All the way to now, it's like there was a ritual aspect in that. And now I like to basically roll a joint. I like to put it in the grinder, and I put rosin or hash in the grinder. I grind it up together.
Oh wow!
And I roll a cone that way, and I smoke it. And people like will be like even at MJ, it's like, dude, this thing went around this 6-person circle 6-8 times, right. No, dude, it's like a fucking 1/4 gram of rosin in there too. They're like, that's what's that. Yeah, no, that's how it makes it around.
Totally.
Otherwise,
otherwise it just gets to sit, or it runs like crazy.
Oh my
Sometimes
God,
people want to hit them too hard.
Oh, because they're like, oh, joint. Oh, and it tastes good.
Oh yeah, exactly. The first hit they might take a small one. The second hit they're like trying to, they're trying to take it out.
Totally. Things like, so like. Rolling them with the rosin or the hash, it keeps them, or even like the old school hash that like, what I like to do is do like 70 to 120 or 70 to 160 and just granulate it and air dry it. Yeah. And then you just put that, grind that in with it.
That's the best. I love it. I love good bubble hash. I mean, I was raised on good bubble hash from the early 90s. Before we had bubble bags, my buddy Micah showed me how to make them on silk screens. And we had like this ritual in a 5-gallon bucket. You had to stir it one direction. Had to stir it in the other direction. You had to let it settle. Right. And then with a solo cup, you're scooping it over, you were literally scooping it over the silk screen, and we let it dry on the silk screen. We didn't know any better, know any different. But the hash was amazing. And so it was like, we discovered gold, at that point. I mean,
back then it was gold. Cause I remember doing the whatever early 2000, with the bags.
Yeah.
But then the 25, 28, and 40 were like the cream because we're doing dry trim, catching these haze strains or golden pineapple, whatever. And those bars, each one of those, I'd make a 28, 25 bar, I'd make a 40 bar, I'd make a 70 bar, and really putting it in the three hole bowls of the Illadelph back then, and so the 20 something and the 40 something were the best of that. Because, I think it's catching the smallest trichomes, but after they've shriveled up. So it's actually like probably a 70 it's catching, and
totally.
And so but it's just different. I remember making these bricks and pressing like silk screen on silk screen, paper towel underneath, and just pressing all the water.
You get some wild colors out of them too,
dude.
And
when you break them,
hues.
After they, some of them would look like shit on the outside, but you break it, it'd be so gold, like a little gold bar, and you're like, ooh.
Oh yeah, that 45. We get some amazing tones, like different hues of red sometimes, or orange. Some really cool stuff. Yeah, I mean, those were amazing days.
Dude, when I remember making some out in I was out in Cresswell out in my. I remember it was snowing and I was doing this golden pineapple, wash, and I don't know what happened. I know I wasn't microdosing, but when the trichome started to release heavy, it looked like almost like an iridescence in the foam, and I was like, fucking something's happening, because it was so cold, it was so snowy, and it was just like, everything was perfect, and it was just releasing in the mountain. It was dumping. You're just like, fuck, this is sick.
You got a big old spoonful at the bottom. Dude. Those were the best,
Oh my goodness.
Because there were sometimes we'd wash stuff and we didn't know the genetics or something. We'd wash it and there'd be nothing. And then other times you'd be like, well, because we did a lot of frozen too. So we would have frozen sugar trim. Once we figured that out, it was a game changer, but not everything washed the same. It still doesn't.
Totally.
Right. And so you'd be trying something for the first time, excited, and you'd be like, oh, there's not even a spoonful in there.
Or it'd be kind of junky, You're like, oh, this isn't, and that's what I noticed, some of the ones that with the dry trim method, with the big trichome, you're like, the amount you're catching in the in the 120, the 160, you're like, what, dude, that's crazy looking.
Totally.
And then, or versus, some of the stuff that that'll ghost you on a fresh frozen wash, like Golden or Trinity, they'll straight ghost you,
Yeah.
But then you dry it and it's like, what? This
is
like full meld, it's like crazy. Some of the strains that on a fresh frozen will give you a ghost, but then on a dry trim will give you some, the shit'll look like fresh froze. It'll, crazy, It's like,
yeah, it's so amazing. And hash is so wild and they're just really dialing in the genetics now too. So it's really amazing the directions they're going. I love rosin, but I still just love good bubble hash. For me, dabbable bubble hash is pretty great too.
Well, that's why, this 90 full melt and stuff, it's, you melt, it's like better than rosin and anything. And, like, not to try to be I'm not trying to say this or be a hater to rosin or anything, but I don't know, like pressure, heat, parchment, that combo with all this microplastic and stuff, like I can't really, I don't know if there's something in there. So I do know for sure in like some 90U full melt that's just caught with the bag, there's less chances of microplastic and stuff in there than there is some pressurized squashed plastic thing, So
well, I'm excited about all these static machines coming out now too. I think it's great. Static's awesome because we talk about, solventless and they say bubble hash solvent. Water in my chemistry book in high school, it says water is the master solvent, right? Like,
it'll go through granite. It'll do,
totally. It like literally in big bold letters going back, I was like, whoa. And then solventless comes out. I love Nicotine and I think it's great. He coined a term that's very unique and still accepted today. And that's how we change language and stuff. But true solventless is static bubble hash. Not bubble hash, but the second we put it through water, any sort of sift, and I loved sift back in the day. I loved Keef.
Well, remember when Cuban Grower came on, dude, doing that kind of
totally.
static.
And he was like with a microscope pulling particles out.
You're like, what?
Yeah, and it's funny because like the cameras that we had back then weren't like the cameras we have now. And it's like there were still incredible photos on Instagram, back in the day. This was over 10 years ago.
Well, even like, like Eric Nuckshots is a good friend of mine and everything. And, and like seeing the transition from, what's happening with, like him, Nick with, and Zoom Gardens, what I mean? Nick, and then also like Marvin Surface Area, these, it's insane, bro. Like what's happening. You're just like, wow. And to be able to see that on such a high scientific level that even, the only people that are really doing that level of stacking are like bug shooters and, people like shooting stuff like that.
Oh yeah. It's totally amazing. Dynasty Genetics.
Oh yeah. Totally.
Like his stuff, his photography is just like some of these guys are just so skilled and the quality of photos.
They're photography. They're artists.
They're artists because there's so much to it. A lot of people just see the picture and they get excited about this picture. They don't know what, it's just like with genetics and other things. They don't know really what went into it. They see the end result and they're like, oh, that's amazing. But they don't understand.
Look how much clarity there is on that flower.
Harvesting that plant and preparing that plant and getting it at the right moment and then stacking those photos properly and having the light perfect and all these things that have to happen for you to get that photo. It's pretty exciting. I get excited because I've seen the process and I understand it a little bit more. And once you start to understand, it's like, wow, it's really, especially if you have a photographer that's like trying to learn how to do it and you're like, well, it doesn't look like that. And it's because of this, and this.
Totally.
And even the cultivation, like if you use stuff where you have burnt tips on your leaves, if you're using salts that burn your tips of your leaves a little bit, it's not going to look as good. The photo's not going to look nearly as good.
Well, even if the flower's pushed hard, you can tell,
right,
especially people that can tell.
When you can tell, you can tell. Yeah. Swollen backs where they're like over swollen, you know what I mean?
Like it's like, oh, it's like someone doing steroids or someone like being like, heady organic, fed grass, fed beef, dude.
And it has a glow to it, right? Like they both have a glow to it in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. Without a doubt that, and I think that's the cool thing is, whatever floats your boat with this one. And this plant has countless expressions and
there's something for everybody.
And humans have countless expressions. And so like, I think that combination is a beautiful thing. Whatever you want to do, just grow more weed and, plant more seeds and like do more, that's.
If you love it, double down on it. It's one of those things. And, I think not doing it for money, doing it because you love it and you're devoted to it. And it's one of those things that you feel aligned with.
Well, that was back in the day. I would never consult anyone or give them information if they're doing it for money.
Yeah.
They had to love the plant. They had to love because, the money can be a side product.
Yeah.
If you're devoted and you're giving it your all, for sure, whatever field you're in doesn't have to be weed, but money's going to come.
Yeah.
But that devotion and that heart and that care, that's rare.
Totally. And that's what I love about Capulated and the Mac 1. Say what you want about Mac 1 as a genetic or you like the smoke, don't like the smoke. But the way he gave out the cuts, that's pretty special. And, it's not seen across the board typically these days or if it is, people don't talk about it. Mac 1 was something that was never supposed to be sold. It was supposed to be given and shared with good people.
Totally.
And, I love that about the plant. And I feel like that's just one of those good examples that we can all learn from.
For sure. I mean, that kind of intention and that kind of like, stewardship.
Right.
Really, that means something, and that's something special. And those kind of vibes should be, something that we're like, seeing and emulating in whatever way we can. We gotta give our heart, however we're doing it, and that's a good example of that for sure.
Yeah,
because that was a special plant at that time, and what it was, the look, the terp, the structure, what it was doing, and what it did for the industry.
And it's an anomaly too within that cross, like for you to get those terps, and then some of the other crosses that I've seen within the progeny, some of the other plants. We had the Mac 69, which was very hazy, very Colombian, and then you got this Mac 1 that's very soft, and it looks amazing too. Like I've seen it in some amazing grows outdoors in greenhouse where it's like you look across from 50 feet away and you're like, what is that? It has
what's that one glowing over there?
That pink glow. It like has this pink glow and it's super frosty, and it's like they're not tall plants. They're like these amazing, delicate, extremely special.
Yeah, it reminds me of a plant that was going around Eugene. We called it the Dawn.
Yeah.
It was, they called it the kid next door, neighbor kid, whatever. But it was, train wreck by Purple Laffy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was similar, like see it across the room, pink, blah, like whatever. And it's like, those ones are cool, really, with that kind of give that glow, no matter how big the field is or how big the room is. You see those, out there. And
2018. Leo Furman aficionado. I got some of his seeds from TH Caesar, one of my buddies, and he gave me these seeds, and they were super expensive. And I was like, "This is crazy! $2,500 on the aftermarket is what they were going for, for a 10-pack." And I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna pop them." Right? I want to see. I don't care about this aftermarket thing. I want to see how good these seeds are because I didn't really know Leo as a friend at the time. We're friends now,
Really?
and maybe it was earlier than that, but. When I popped them, we had popped 800 seeds or something like that, and we were popping them in my buddy's backyard, and there was this little patch that you could see from 30 feet away, and everybody would be like, what are those? And it wasn't just the way they looked, because, there's a lot of stuff, Oreos and some of the stuff that looks really good. It has a really amazing look that would attract you to it. This stuff, it was like the look, the smell, the structure, everything about every one of the plants was amazing. Like you could see it. And all these different expressions, because there's so many different seeds out there, but it was like this little patch, and that's a super special one. Leo's got some of those still around. So he's supposed to drop some off. I'm waiting for those.
Sick.
But yeah, good. And that changed my mind about like the value of seeds. And I know he was selling his $200 a pack even back then, and the value of seeds, and it's all subjective to the individual. He sold them for $200, but it's like these SB Dunks that go for $5,000, these pairs of Nikes, it's like Nike doesn't sell for that much, but the secondary market, it is what it is. And the value of a seed is so subjective to the individual.
Totally. And what they can do with it. I mean, I've always had like high respect for Aficionado and Leo and like packaging, what he did branding wise. It's like, it's beautiful,
It's
really
beautiful,
impressive. You can't, if you argue with it, you're just a hater,
Yeah, exactly.
Because that shit's pimp,
Yeah, and he's given me his drops over the last couple of years. When he has new drops, he's given me packs, and like I think his Zodi had the actual gold plant tags in him, and I'm like, dude, that is just. He's always an outside the box thinker. He wants it to be elegant, and I love the wax stamps on the stuff, and just the way he takes it to a different level and makes it his own.
For sure, it's beautiful, and he was the first like that, period. And there's been a lot of knockoffs since then, but like, like even I waxed my, corks for a while because I was like, oh, that's sick what he's doing. I don't know, wax the fucking cork,
craft. And it has this craft feel to it. I love that.
For sure. It's like, it's really, it's Louis Vuitton and craft combo kind of. It's like really what it reminds me of is that like crossover of, fine. And, it's like when you take the finest foods and you have a dinner in Humboldt or something.
For sure. It'd be one thing if his genetics didn't back it, but his genetics are good. Like he is a great breeder. He's a great person, first of all, but he's a great breeder. And his seeds that he put in those expensive packages where he did spend some money and there was a lot of thought that went into it, but they're all good genetics. I've always been super happy with everything that I popped of his.
Well, that 78 Affy is in a lot of the work. I put the 78 Affy to the Sour OG, made the Tenzins, and like, I've done a lot of work with that, and I'm not kidding. Like every single pheno that popped out of that 78 Affy by the Sour OG was epic, and I kept the 2 and the 4, the Tenzin Kush 2 and 4, but it's only because there just wasn't that many of them, and that's what was left. And they were winners, the 3 was a winner too, but these 2 were better. So I was just like, and ended up doing quite a bit of work with it just because for that fact, it was good,
Nice.
Yeah.
So if you had one piece of advice for your younger self, what would that one piece of advice be?
Go bigger. No.
Go bigger, go harder.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. I think sometimes going bigger, not going big keeps you out of trouble.
Yeah.
To really just focus more on helping instead of focusing on myself.
Yeah.
And really, I went with that pretty hard, but if I would have did it more pure-minded, more wholesomely, I did it the best I could, but if I could have did it better, would have created more happiness, I think.
Yeah.
Even I'm quite a happy guy now, but I go through my phases, but I think if I did things more with an altruistic intention from the beginning, it would have just created better results in the end, And the results are good, but you know how we are when we're in our early 20s, and late teens, early 20s, we do a lot of arrogant, stupid shit,
Yeah, we think the world's a lot different than it really is.
Totally.
And I think we gain experience and knowledge over time. And, it's like, for me, the beauty of this podcast, I saw Joe Rogan doing his podcast, and I felt like watching him over the years, he got smarter, right? And I'm like, dude, this guy's, he talks more intelligently, for one thing.
For sure.
But he gets all these perspectives from all these different people.
High level people too.
High level people. And I feel like I get high level cannabis people and people that have experience, and I get a piece of each one of those people when I do this podcast. So having you on today has been a great podcast and a great time. And I feel like it's one of those ones where I've got somebody in the industry who's experienced a lot, who knows a lot about cannabis, who loves the plant, who's a true steward of the plant. So if people are looking to find out more about you, where can they go?
Greenbodhi.org, gbgenetics.com.
Yep.
Those are my 2, web-based realities. Instagram's Green Bodhi and the real Green Bodhi. Obviously LinkedIn, John Bay's Green Bodhi, whatever, and Twitter, X, whatever, Green Bodhi. It's like kind of those are where you're gonna find me. But I suggest the website really, because
you selling seeds on your website?
Selling seeds on gbgenetics.com, and we're doing some consulting for like home growers and stuff. And they can reach me through greenbodhi.org. Just kind of trying to help people keep it simple and just give this information, because at a scaled level, people aren't really interested in organics. They've got to go convention because of GMP and these different aspects. But on a boutique level, organics is kind of our forte. So I really want to offer that simplicity and that information to as many people as I can, because fuck, man, we need more people growing weed in their closet, in their garage, in their bedroom, in their every room in their house, and live in their living room. Whatever it takes, like the old days. That's
sleeping next to their plants.
I
used to do that. Now I have allergies. I don't know.
Dude, I used to cure, and I remember, I'd cure and dry everything in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And just, and as when those first few days, the terps are powerful,
Oh yeah.
You're just like, whoa, am I not even sleeping?
My buddy Joe, I'm sure if I went to his house during trimming, he still has black clone trays where he trims in and he falls asleep next to them, even still. I mean, we used to do that all the time, but he's still living, and he's up in Oregon.
Yes,
it's popular up there for sure.
It's like we're committed.
Yeah,
we're committed to this plant.
Yeah, I mean, the prices these days, you have to be.
I mean,
it's not all about money anymore, and I think we're becoming farmers now. And I think that rock star lifestyle. I mean, there's still some people, whatever, but like, it's not about that rock star life. It's about something more.
For sure. I mean, we live that one too, but now it's a lot different. And if you're still getting good money for your herb, that's good. And you deserve it if you are, because it's not an easy feat these days. But really, it's for the heart of it, I think, these days, and sharing the information, and really actually the stewardship of being able to teach people how to do it their own, people give them the genetics and the tools to be able to do it good on their own, and the variety and the potentials to be able for them to have a multitude of different aspects of this plant. Once people understand, how many, different ranges there is, it's limitless. So don't get stuck in one little lane, really like get outside the box and start to discover these things. Cause as and
there's so much out there.
Fuck, man, change everyone's lives here,
Yeah.
So,
Well, and if you're in Oregon, you might want to look to some other place like Washington. And if you're in California, you might want to look to Oregon for some good genetics like we did back in the day. I feel like it's a great straight direction to go. You know, you're going right from the Bay up to Eugene,
the Silk Road,
Portland. Seriously. And, you know, and Humboldt has some amazing stuff. Mendo has some amazing stuff. You know, Trinity, all these places.
For sure.
Grass Valley, you know, California. But
well, I mean, that's where everyone
Oregon,
from the Bay went, right? They went all the Grass Valley.
We went Grass Valley, Mendo, but really there's even places further outside. But now it's like, okay, we can go to Colorado. We can get good stuff. We can go to Arizona. And there's a lot of people that are passionate about it.
For sure. And holding on to the good stuff is really, you know, a lot of people have done that. So it's out there.
Yeah. And if you're like-minded, there's other like-minded people out there, you know, there's that love cannabis. So
yeah, man.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today, man.
Thank you so much. It's been a real honor and really a pleasure. And, you know, it's just awesome to sit with like-minded people, and especially, you know, legends like you. It's just really been an honor. So thank you, you know.
For sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's great having, well, I've been having a lot of people my age on the show. And so it's great. Like we have similar war stories, similar experiences, and we think about life in the same way. I feel like, you know, I'm over the hill now, and I love these things.
Yeah, no, it's sick. It's been a lot of years, and really such a blessing, this plant and the people, the community. And, you know, I just every day just so thankful. So thank you.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe down below.